Hey, are you muted there, Ron?
I'm doing a Marlin to start the show. Tension on deck.
There you go. There you go. What's going on, Ron? How's everything?
Everything's good. Everything is good. How are you?
Good. Hanging in there. Keeping busy, running
Yeah,
around.
a lot going on.
Yeah.
A lot going on. A lot going on in the city. A lot going on in the world. So let's bring up something. I think we just lived through something very historic, right?
Yeah.
The peace accord or the peace deal that Trump brokered in the Middle East. All remaining living hostages have been released. I know the bodies of some of the hostages, I'm not sure if they're all, have been returned. Something that people didn't think was possible. So I just think that's an amazing, amazing thing. Whether it's going to be long-lasting peace, that remains to be seen. And we'll find out. But, what are your thoughts on all this?
Yeah. No, I mean, a very historical moment. Really got to give credit to President Trump for putting it together. Bringing the parties together. I know some of the Egyptian, people in the region have also helped. So I mean, everybody came together, make the plan. I know, like Hardex's core speaking, the Moss is playing games with some of the deceased. I hope they don't anymore. I hope that actually they come to the terms that they agree to and release some of the deceased bodies so they can give closure to the families. But I'm telling you, he deserves the Nobel Peace Prize. I think that he missed this year, but I would say he's serious candidate for next year, and he definitely deserves it. He brokered the deal, right? That was his claim to fame, right? He was always the deal maker, and this shows that he can make the deal. I mean, would we want to have sooner? Yeah, absolutely. But success comes with time, and he was able to do it. You can't fault him for that. You can't fault him for that. He did a great job. And I also have to give credit to his Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, who is a phenomenal guy. I mean, he's funny. I know on Labor Day he said, I know all about Labor Day because I have like 4 jobs in this administration. But he's really good at it, and he is probably one of the best secretaries of state that we've seen in a long time. So kudos to the administration and the president.
Yeah, and as far as the Nobel Peace Prize, I know there's a lot of banter back and forth, and of course, Trump, he's not shy with words on what he thinks he deserves. But yeah, the cutoff for the Nobel Peace Prize for this year was in January. So all of this, happened after the cutoff, and I don't know that they make exceptions like that for something that happens. But definitely, he should be receiving it next year, without a doubt. No matter what you think, no matter what your politics are, this is an amazing thing. And we pray that it is true peace. The politics of it all, what's going to happen going forward, what's going to happen with the politics of it, and the 2-state solution and everything else. That's let's hope that peace does come to the region, and they work everything else out in the second phase of this peace deal. And what's amazing, and we're going to talk about a lot of it. It kind of ties into the whole show today, that everybody is congratulating him and giving him his due credit.
Oh yeah,
on both sides of the aisle, including Hillary Clinton, and Chuck Schumer even gave him credit. So that's an amazing thing. Listen, you can't deny it. Everybody's giving. Nobody else is trying to take credit for it. Everybody's
there's one person though. I did see on Newsmax somebody said Biden was trying to take credit for it.
Oh, they said Biden had the same deal, but he didn't execute it.
No, okay. There's not much Biden executed.
Right, right. And then hardcore is he's looking for that number one next to his name today. He's jumping all over the chat, all over, and he's saying they have made exceptions in the past. And then yes, true. Mondami had a normal, usual Mondami word salad response that doesn't answer a question and doesn't give true answers. But that's for another show. But yeah, again, just it's a wonderful thing. Closure for some families. End of a unbelievable ordeal for the hostages who went through unimaginable things. The families of the lost loved ones that might have gotten back, the deceased, and again, the end to the violence and the end to the war, hopefully.
Yeah, you got to remember too that Israel is our number one ally over there. There's a lot of hostile countries over there that are anti-American and will chant "Death to America." So keeping Israel and helping Israel as an ally, that's one of our jobs as the United States of America. We got to keep our allies safe.
Yeah. Yeah. Good evening, Joe. Good to see you. So
I don't think we don't need a 28 from Joe because he's always on time. So we'll eat the lateness right today. We don't need no 28.
Listen, 7.5 minutes late.
Yeah.
7.5 minutes late. It's fine.
He gets the play.
That's it. Just don't walk into my roll call late. If you're late, wait outside. See me after the roll call. Don't interrupt the roll call. I always hated that. When somebody, if you're late, stand outside and wait. Don't come in.
Yeah, no.
Bring attention to yourself. Interrupt the roll call.
And when you see me walk out and just say, "Hey, all the radios are accounted for," I took that upon myself to do it.
Yeah, there you go. 8311. Biden said thanks to Trump for taking the plan to the finish line.
Yeah, right.
Okay. And Crumbs and Pete, part of the Pete Faselli, part of the Finest Unfiltered family, the co-host of the 10-4 Tavern on Tuesday night. Another great show last night.
Yep.
Make sure you go back and you watch last night's episode. Retired homicide detective, Miami-Dade Police, and him and Tom do a great job. Next week they got a great show. Retired Chief of Detective Bobby Boyce. So really looking forward to that show next week.
Yeah,
so make sure we'll plug that at the end. But yeah.
So, what's funny about Pete and Tom's show yesterday, when he was speaking about all the retired cops in Florida, like they take up all the room, they're like, "Hey, come into the FOP," and there's like all these, "Where are you from? Where are you from? Oh, who'd you work with? All these retired NYPD cops. But yeah, they definitely watch that show. Very interesting.
Yeah, Phil, don't worry. Rob and I, we were never those bosses. You're not getting transferred. You're not getting bounced. Don't worry about it.
No, we already gave Joe the play. So anybody else that's late, you're good, man.
We're not trying for 3 hours. I'm sorry. We're gonna see. We'll see how it goes once the conversation gets going. We'll see how it goes. We got a few things to cover tonight. We're going to be talking about an incident that was reported by Viral News New York City on X about a subject that approached some cops in Times Square with handcuffs on, and we're going to go over that in a few minutes, and we'll go over that in a few minutes and talk about that. Talk about the allegations of the incident, because to preface it, we have not been able to confirm the details of this story as reported by Viral News New York City, and So everything seems to point to what was reported, but we haven't been able to confirm it. So we're not going to release the name of the alleged officer that was involved. And, we're going to talk about if this is what happened, we'll give our opinion on that. And then we're also going to speak about what we do see on the video. We're going to show you the video. And then we're going to get into an incident on Staten Island where there was a gun collar made. We're going to show you the video. We're going to talk about the tactics on that from our perspective. And then we're going to talk about a couple of police-involved shootings, one here in New York, one in Milwaukee. We'll talk about some very interesting turns of events with those incidences as it pertains to the families and the takes of the incidents from the families. And might get into a little bit of tactics too. Talk about that. So a lot of tactics today. Well, let's jump right into it. Yeah, anything else before we jump right into it?
No, let's roll with it.
All right. So Viral News, New York City. He's an independent journalist. He's out running the streets at night, puts out a lot of posts about things. He puts out breaking news. Man walks up to NYPD in Times Square, still handcuffed after Apple Store encounter. In a bizarre incident Friday night, a man walked up to an NYPD offices in Times Square asking for help to remove a pair of handcuffs still locked around his wrists, cuffed in the front. The man told officers and told me directly on video that he had been in an Apple store, roughly 30-minute walk away, charging his phone when the store manager asked him to leave. He says a female NYPD officer working in a paid detail at the store placed him in handcuffs and began yelling at him, but never formally placed him under arrest. He told me he eventually left the store on his own while still wearing the officer's handcuffs. After a 3-hour investigation, sources confirmed to Viral News, to him, that the handcuffs allegedly belonged to an officer working paid detail at Apple Store, and the investigation is active and ongoing. So what I will say is I've spoken to Orrin Levy, who is Viral News New York City. We were emailing back and forth, and he did give me the officer's information. We were able to confirm that the officer he's speaking about was modified on the date of the incident. But again, since we couldn't confirm and it wasn't confirmed by the NYPD in any other publication, we're going to just go with what we are presented here and give our perspective on that. We don't want to misspeak, and we don't want to put somebody's name out there that we're not 100% confirmed is involved. So let's take a look at this video.
I'm sitting in the Apple store, minding my business. I go there every single day just to charge my phone. I go there, I sit down, I charge my phone. Less than 30 to 40 minutes later, a white man, regular man, he comes up and pretty much pressures me to leave and says, "Sir, you only have 15 minutes. You only have 15 minutes, and then you have to leave." So I told him, "Sir, I will leave when I'm ready, and I need to charge my phone because there's no other place for me to charge my phone, and this is what they do."
Damn, bro. So you just walked off?
A lady at the Apple store.
Why?
For no reason, just because I charged my phone.
So now this guy's at the substation, Times Square, and he's in there.
It just cracks me up. Like I just envision what the four cops that are standing in front of the substation, and this gentleman comes up with he's cuffed and basically gives this story to them. It's like, really? Like, I think you have to take a step back and like you got to look around. Am I being pranked here? Is somebody is this somebody else videotaping this? Is this gonna go viral somewhere? Because it's like, yeah, just it's absurd. It's crazy,
Yeah, like you said, it's obscure, and hardcore is 91, 98. Only rookies use the serial numbered cups. So for those who don't know, in the NYPD, when you get your first pair of handcuffs, you have to record your serial number on your what's called a 10 card. If they even do 10 cards anymore, everything's electronic.
Mhm.
But those always got stuck in the back of your locker, and then you went out and you bought new Smith and Wesson handcuffs or whatever for the field. And yeah, maybe if he didn't walk up to cops, that would have been probably the end of this all. But he did. He walked up to cops, and allegedly, you heard him. He said that he was in there. He goes in there all the time to charge his phone. That the manager or somebody came up.
Yeah.
And told him to leave. So a paid detail officer got involved, yelled at him, handcuffed him for whatever reason, and then he left.
Yeah. Well, I get if he's told to leave and he refuses, right? So that is a trespass. You can be trespassed from the building, right?
Right.
So I mean, technically, if that officer there was making, he refuses to leave, and then the Apple Store manager says, "Well, I want to press charges," and she's the pay he or she is the pay detail. All right, then you're going to get cuffed and you're going to get arrested. But there's a point where you're supposed to, if you're putting your handcuffs on somebody,
That's it.
That's your prisoner.
That's it. And then we had the thumbnail for our show today, and just for those who aren't that familiar with X now, when you have a photo, you can actually animate and make a movie out of it. So for those who didn't see on X our thumbnail, it's pretty fitting. I can imagine that's kind of what happened, right?
That's what happened right there.
And he decided to vamoose, but he didn't say that he ran away from her or anything like that. I mean, we don't know the story. That's the whole thing. We don't know what happened. We don't know if he was rear cuffed and he was able to maneuver his hands to the front. But I'm sure that there was quite the investigation. And I don't know, you want to be the duty captain that responds or the duty chief that gets that phone call?
Well, I mean, right? What we're going to suspend right there,
I agree with you. And again, we don't have a confirmation from the NYPD. We don't have the NYPD's version of any of this. None of the quote unquote mainstream media or publications picked up on this
not yet.
Story. Not yet. Maybe after they see it today, and got the NYPD's version. But yeah,
here's the problem. Like if you go respond as a duty captain, a duty inspector, or get notified as a duty chief, is who did she call or he call? Right? Was there any notification? Because normally a missing prisoner, right, or an escaped prisoner, that's a level 1 off the bat, right? Because you want to get enough people there and you want to find the person. So right off the bat, it's like you didn't do anything, you didn't make any notifications, and this guy's walking down the block with these handcuffs. So, I can understand, like there have been situations where somebody lost a prisoner. Let's say they're in a hospital and the doctor says, "Hey, uncuff this person because I got to examine them." All right, doc, but I need you to sign my memo book. I don't know how they do it now with the digital memo book, but you got to sign your memo book and saying that I'm advising not to do this or whatever. Maybe leg shackles weren't available because that was the next thing that they wanted you to have, leg shackles. And then this guy overpowers you and escapes. That's not a modification or a suspension. I mean, that's something that could happen. But this, when there's no notification, there's no level 1, there's nothing called, there's no patrol supervisor requested, and the guy's just allowed to walk down the block with handcuffs on. And if they are, in fact, that person's handcuffs, the serialized handcuffs, I mean, like Hard X Core said, that's the first thing you do is you said it too just now. Here's my handcuffs that I have to get inspected on my yearly inspection, and here's my other handcuffs that I'm going to carry out on patrol. You know what? And if this didn't happen in an Apple store, and if this didn't just happened on the street and the guy got away, then I mean, as bad as it is, with somebody else with the unlisted handcuffs on there, you could probably wash your hands of it. But there's too many things here that you know.
And you're gonna go to the Apple store. You're gonna talk to this officer, and you're gonna see that this officer no longer has a pair of handcuffs. There's an empty handcuff case on this officer's belt.
They're not mine.
Hardcore is like captain shakes his head and calls duty inspector to pass the buck. Yeah, this is definitely a duty inspector, duty chief job because there's going to be a change in duty status, and a duty chief is the one that can make that call. Duty inspector, gets a story from the captain. On this one, you would go to the scene, obviously, and you would confer with the duty chief, give you a recommendation, and the duty chief makes the call on this. The officer worked in the borough of the alleged officer worked in the borough of the Apple store in Manhattan North. Was there a Manhattan North duty chief? Because a lot of times if there's a chief working in the borough, you talk to your own chief. You keep it in house. You don't bother the duty chief, who's a citywide chief. You call up and you say, "All right, is the XO working? Is the CO of the borough working?" And you tell them what you have, and you run it past them, and they're the ones that make the determination. So we don't know. We don't know what the story is.
If you look at RDB brings up a good point, though. Like they don't want to pay detail to make the arrest. So they're at a minimum, there should have been a notification to the patrol supervisor or a request a sector to respond. And as far as we know, and then at that point, you still don't let the prisoner start walking around and continuing to charge their phone or walk down the street, right? So, but yeah, it's definitely should have called the local precinct, or I mean, and then when you go back in that room, because I don't know if you remember, like years ago, I had a foot post on Grand Concourse and Fordham Road. It was Alexander's, was right on the corner there in the Bronx, right on the Grand Concourse. And I hated that foot post because in it you would always get Alexander holding one. Now, of course, you're right on the post, so you got to take it. And then they would normally, the security in there would have somebody cuffed up in the security room, and then you'd have to take them and cuff them with your cuffs, and then take them to the precinct as a shoplifter or whatever the case may be. And those are like the mundane type of arrests that you always hated to do. But that's your call. And once you put your cuffs on that person, that's your prisoner, man. You're married. You're married to that person. So
right. And QC Beast is saying, don't pay detail, have radios. Why wouldn't the cop chase after the prisoner? We don't have the answer. Pay detail, they do have radios. Whether that radio was fully charged because they took their uniform home and their radio, they worked the whole tour with their radio and they didn't change batteries, whatever the case. Right. But why aren't, you call 911, you call the local precinct, you do something. And then Lily is asking, would the DA's office take this case? The DA's office would, like somebody else said, I think it was probably Hardcore. With the amount of posts, I'm gonna hedge my bet that it was Hardcore. Said it's this is a DAT, a desk appearance ticket, which means Had he been arrested for refusing to leave the Apple store, he would have gotten what's called a desk appearance ticket. It's a summons to appear in court at a later date. If he went through the system for whatever reason, the Manhattan District Attorney's Office is absolutely not going to prosecute this case for trespassing, which, in all honesty, I don't think they should. The guy's in there, he's charging his phone. He's, come on.
Unless he gave them a hard time. If the officer went over to him and said, "Hey, all right, enough what you're charging your phone. You gotta leave the store," and he says, "Well, I'm not leaving until my phone's charged." Well, I'm going to give you a choice. You either leave with an uncharged phone, or you're going to leave in handcuffs with an uncharged phone. And I guess he chose to leave. I didn't literally mean leave with handcuffs on by yourself, though, but you're supposed to kind of take custody of that prisoner.
And Sleepy Joe, maybe she thought she'd be stuck with the collar, LOL. I will say this, that the officer that is being alleged to have been involved in this incident is a very active officer. So I don't think that's the case. Again, we're not going to name the officer, but we do have the officer's information, and that officer is not afraid of making arrests. We'll leave it at that.
Which kind of is weird that that he or she wouldn't report it then, right? It's kind of weird. Like, why wouldn't you put that out? Like, why would you allow yourself to possibly get in trouble for having the prisoner, flee down the street? I mean, obviously that individual, he's at the Times Square substation for a while. So it's not like, all right, maybe he was there and then all of a sudden somebody's chugging down the block like, hey, I'm looking for but nothing. It's silent, so no.
And they said that the Apple store is 30 minutes away.
Yeah, so maybe he took a cab.
Listen, if it obviously it wasn't reported, because if it was reported, there would have been a transmission over the radio,
and those cops would have known too, right off the bat.
100%. They would have known it was coming. They would have been on the lookout, right? A bolo, right? A be on the lookout type of thing. There would have been transmissions over the radio. There would have been alerts to the phones that do come over to the phones. Not that everybody checks all these alerts, but you do get alerts to your phones that you have to actually read before you can delete them. So listen, I don't know what's alleged is just unthinkable to cops. And like you said, the fact that this officer that may have been involved is very active. It makes you wonder even more why this officer didn't get involved and follow up that, hey, he ran out, whatever the case may be. And then listen, it's the Apple store. There's plenty of video. There's no hiding everything that happened. Once we get there, investigations comes to look at the video. We're going to look at the video. It's just, there's no way of getting around it. So
I think you see what Hardcore X goes. You had mentioned that she's an active police officer, not afraid to make arrests, and Hard X Score goes, and she's not afraid to lose them either. That's true. That's true.
I don't get it. I remember, I'll tell a quick story. A friend of mine, we were sergeants together in the 7-8 precinct. We worked midnights. We had Prospect Park. We had a lot of crime actually going on inside Prospect Park on the midnight, related to that area. And so we do a lot of patrols inside the park. And, you would get somebody in the park after dark. That's a criminal court summons, right? And we're not talking about somebody that's walking home and cutting through. You can tell who's in there for nefarious reasons.
Hanging out, yeah.
Who's hanging out? But if you're in there for nefarious reasons, then we get a lot of feedback today. I'm not sure what's going on, but the one day he puts over a foot pursuit. Mail this, that, and the other thing, heading eastbound Prospect Park West, blah, 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 blah. handcuff on his right wrist.
You know, right? Yeah.
So we're like, bro, he wasn't a prisoner yet. You didn't have him cuffed, you know? But yeah, it happens. But there, they put it over. He wound up taking a hit. Him and his driver wound up taking a hit for losing a quote unquote a prisoner. But it is what it is. But whatever happened inside that Apple store, we don't know. We can only imagine. But it's never worth letting something like this happen. Letting this, even if you were wrong for putting the cuffs on the guy, even if you did front cuff him for some reason, and again, we don't know that he was not rear cuffed and then was able to slide the cuffs to the front, which is possible. We don't know. And even if she did front cuff and she did these things wrong, it's not as bad as the guy getting away with your handcuffs and just doing nothing, being complacent and doing nothing. So
where else did we see this? Didn't the president fall out of a van up in the 4-4 or 4-8? It was in the 4-8, right?
They didn't even realize. It was like what? Like 50 seconds later, the van comes back.
The van comes back.
Way to go. Yeah. So things happen. Things happen. But let's move away from what happened in the Apple store. I want to talk about some things that nobody's brought up in the chat, which I'm very surprised.
Wait, so what you're saying is what happens in the Apple store stays in the Apple store?
Let's leave it in the Apple store for now.
All right.
Let's leave it in the Apple store. And let's talk about some of the other things that are going on, right? Let's look at him talking to the reporter.
Even said, sir, you only have 15 minutes. You only have 15 minutes, and then you have to leave. So I told him, sir, I will leave when I'm ready, and I need to charge my phone because there's no other place for me to charge my phone, and this is what they do.
Damn, bro. So you just walked off?
A lady at the Apple store.
Why?
For no reason, just because I charged my phone.
Why does he have? Listen, I understand that this particular reporter, right? You see his watermark there, Viral News New York City, has a good rapport with the officers out in Times Square. He spends a lot of time in Times Square. So allowing him to talk to the prisoner or the suspect or subject or whatever you want to call this guy, right, is one thing. But there's nobody controlling this guy. There's just nobody controlling this guy. And when you watch the whole video, there are cops off to the sides. So it's not like he went up to, Orrin first and he was talking to him and then the cops came up. He started talking to him after he approached the cops. So the cops are trying to figure it out because they're scratching their heads too. Like they're all rookies. You can tell look at how crisp their uniforms are. Look at those gun belts with the belt keepers on the back and everything else. There's no scuffs. There's no anything. It's all fresh leather, right? Look, they don't even have a hole for hanging their hat on their belt yet. Don't get me started on that. That was always a pet peeve of mine. Hanging your hat on a hook or hanging your hat over your gun was even better. That was even better. Hanging your hat over your gun. But these officers are probably like, what the hell do we do? So they're calling their boss. They're waiting for their boss. They're standing around waiting for their boss. But how are they giving this guy so much latitude?
I don't know. The only thing that I'm really happy about them, those 4 officers right there, that one of them didn't take out the cuff key and just take the cuffs off that guy and say, all right, we helped you out. Take care. That's it. So I don't know. Nobody took custody of him from the beginning, right? So I guess it wasn't expected to be taken custody. The good thing is they did an investigation, whether or not they were right there on top of the person. At least they started some sort of investigation to determine exactly why this young man is walking around with cuffs in the front.
Yeah, Phil, Phil the heater guy. I'm so old. I remember when you had to have your hat on your head.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was my thing too. And I wasn't, listen, I don't nitpick. I was never a big disciplinarian, but when I'm an executive, by the time I'm getting to the scene, for the most part, if I'm on patrol and I'm responding to an in progress job, that's the one thing. You get out, you're still figuring things out, and the scene is active, and whatever. But when you're securing the scene and there's no urgency, or you're on a foot post, right? Why isn't your hat on your head? And I'd always get out of the car and I always put my hat on my head. I always put up my hat on my head, and I go right up to the sergeant. With typical Ron sarcasm, right? That my wife loves so much, that I'd go up and I'd say, Sarge. And a lot of times the sergeants would have their hats on. I go, I have my hat on. You have your hat on. Why don't they have their hats on? I don't want to be a dick, but come on. Again, taking accountability. But that's just,
One thing I'll say about the hats, specifically if you're on a foot post, the hat is very important. I can understand you jumping out of an RMP, you're dealing with people, you might not have a hat on, you're running upstairs to a job, going up, a couple flights, but having a hat on a foot post to me is very important because it's identifiable, especially in Manhattan and heavily populated areas. Let's say by the Barclay or one of those other. If you have a hat on and you need help, when responding officers come, you can see that hat. So I think that, and in some aspects, the transit right during the summer months didn't have to wear a hat down in the hole. So I remember getting yelled at an 85. One of Nelson Ruiz, God rest his soul, a great cop. Called for an 85. Now, if Nelson Ruiz called for an 85, that was a legitimate 85. Like that, you knew that was not BS. So we responded, got there, jumped out, helped wrestle with the perp. I think it was a gun collar. Helped them. They recovered the gun. And the first thing the sergeant came up to me and goes, "Where's your hat?" And I go, "Sarge, we're just rolling on the ground with this mutt on an 85. And you're asking me where my hat was?" I said, "My hat's in the car." Where do you think my hat is? I didn't have time. So,
right.
I mean, you have to be, somewhat considerate too, and I'm not saying you weren't. I'm just saying,
But I prefaced it by saying, after the scene is secure,
right.
I'm getting there way after the fact. Even if I get there and it's an active job, I'm jumping out of the car without my hat too. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah,
but
no.
we're all standing around after the fact, right? Or like you said, if you're on a foot post, and Marlon doesn't agree. Marlon, in sensible departments, they would be held for ceremonies only as an active cot. The hat stayed in the car or on my belt. I 100% disagree with it being on your belt. If it's in the car, all right? If it's in the car and you jump out to do your job, that's great. But now if it's a long-term thing, and I'm not talking about getting out and handling a job. I'm talking about when it's, an ongoing situation and I'm getting there after the fact because it's a shooting scene or whatever the case may be. Once it's now like a crime scene and you're just there for security purposes, throw your hat on, look professional, and that was my thing. But again, never at an active scene, never during any kind of in progress job did I worry about that at all. I laughed one time. I was the XO of the 7-3 precinct, and there were 2 XOs at the time. And the other guy, I won't mention his name. People know him, PV. People know who he is. And he was trying to go after the 3rd platoon commander, who was a great guy. He was an active guy, was always out on patrol, hated the desk, supported his troops, fought for his troops, and this guy wanted to give him a CD for not having his hat at a shooting scene. He went to the CO, and the CO said to him, Joe Campbell, says to him, he says, "Hat? You want to give the lieutenant a CD for not wearing his hat at a job?" He goes, "I'm glad these guys come into work every day, and you're worried about giving this guy a CD? Yeah. This is 7-3, bro, and you're worried about them wearing a hat at a shooting scene? Forget about it." So 100% I agree that there's a time and a place. And again, during the active, during something, if you're jumping out because you want to, like Marlon, listen, if you're looking at somebody that's doing something suspicious and you don't want to stand out, I'm not saying to have your hat on. Like you said, you're bringing attention to yourself by wearing that hat, right?
Yeah.
100%. But if you see somebody suspicious, you take your hat off. That's one thing. But we're going to see.
Boy, you ever see a state trooper without a hat?
Oh,
How many times I've been pulled over and that guy's getting out of the car, right? He's probably about 6'8". He's stacked up, right? He's got muscles on top of muscles, and he puts this big hat on, and it commands a certain amount of respect too. But I just want to jump in with Hardcore. Hard X Core, he mentioned that years ago that there was a job where a perp was found not guilty of murder and used the defense. A cop came through the door, no hat on, and he didn't know he was a cop. And it's a true story. And you know what? I also have a story too with ESU. A long time ago, ESU didn't have like police on the front of their tack vests and have visible patches. And that was also somebody else's defense when they shot at the ESU guys coming in. That the defense was, I didn't know who was coming in at 6 o'clock in the morning on a warrant. I thought it was somebody breaking into my house, and they had no identifiable insignia that would tell me that it was the police coming in. So that's why I shot at them, and they got off on that too. So yeah, it's definitely it gives identifiable position for the police officers. It shows, and it commands respect too, in my opinion. So
yeah, no, I agree with you. And Marlon, sorry, Ron, totally disagree with you on this. And for those who don't know, Marlon B is Finest Unfiltered Family. He's on the retired and Unfiltered podcast on the 805 with John and Eric on Mondays and Fridays. Ron will be giving me lots of CDs, LOL. Just to clarify, never once did I give a CD for not wearing a hat. I would give instruction if it was, like I said, well after the fact. And then you bring up, what if you had a job where you had to go up the stairs? I'm not talking about an active job. I'm not talking about conducting some type of investigation at all. None whatsoever. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about just when you're standing around. So, or like here, you're walking through Times Square. This is just, it's just a little annoying. I think we're going too far on the hats here.
Well, just real quick, what you just said, though,
Right.
Times Square, it's the crossroads of the world, right? So you also represent the police department, and if in fact the department wants you to wear a hat, requires you to wear a hat, then you should be wearing a hat there, and you do represent the other. How many? I think there's only 27,000 police officers left, but you do represent every police officer too. So
And
it's important.
I got a text from one of our very loyal followers. It says cops could check on the guy, but what could they arrest him for? Possession of somebody's handcuffs? No. This guy's coming up saying that a cop put handcuffs on him.
Right.
They absolutely have every right to detain this person. They should have rear cuffed him.
He might have been, though.
Excuse me?
He might have been rear cuffed.
He might have been. No, but I'm saying the cops in Times Square. Once he
right.
approaches them and he tells the story that he told, he's saying basically that I committed a crime. I was put in handcuffs, and this cops didn't do anything, so I walked away or I got away or whatever. He's saying that he did something. He articulated a trespass. He articulated that a cop put handcuffs on him, and now he's standing in front of you. You have every single right in the world to rear handcuff that person, conduct an investigation, and suspect him of being, what are you suspecting him of? Right? An escaped prisoner.
Yeah.
So that's what you're suspecting him of. So, and possession of somebody's handcuffs, technically, he fled the scene with those handcuffs. He stole them. So technically, yeah.
At a minimum, bring him into the substation.
Which is what they did and what we're going to talk about.
Eventually, yeah. I would have brought him in right away. It would have been like, come in with us and let's talk about this.
Right. And Michael M., The hat identifies you in the crowd. It's part of your uniform. Wear it.
Yeah,
All right.
good Mike.
For Ask Executives, who does the detail effects? All right. So Sleepy Joe 546. We'll get to that. We'll get to that question later on. Very good. Cops in 7-3 they're doing that set of rules, Sarge. I don't have to be on time for roll call. I work in the ghetto. No, that's not true either. That's not true. Some people had an attitude. 7-3, 7-5. They think, because it's a very, very busy place. Some people think they have an edge. It's for the boss to put you in check and say, we still have a job to do. Chief Calzerano, I don't know that name. A PBBS CO. Mike must be a real old timer. We would always say you never see baseball players without their hats. Leo Firpini, did that same XO once ticket someone for Girl Scout cookie sales? Yeah, same guy. We all had our hats on in the 7-5 back in the day on a foot post. I hated the hat, but I'm not gonna disrespect the boss like that. Yeah, all right. Let's get past the hats. We're beating up. Well, listen, I guess who was it that wanted the 3-hour show? We keep talking about the hats. We're gonna have a 3-hour show. So let's get back to this.
It would have been funny if that prisoner came down with handcuffs and the officer's hat on. That would have been perfect.
So let's look at what else is going on. I gotta, because this is going to come up again later. I want to back it up so that you can see. We're going to forget about the hat on the hook and the fact that none of them are wearing hats on a foot post. But he's still front handcuffed. They're all walking him. Now they got guys behind him, guys next to him. This female officer, or I'll just say this officer, because it doesn't matter if it's a female or a male. This officer on the right side of your screen, her hand is back up behind her vest. So she's not protecting her firearm next to somebody who you don't know what the story is. He's still front cuffed and walking, and there's no situational awareness or fear that this guy could possibly turn and harm them. Wait, am I wrong? Is her gun on the other side? Not that it matters. I can't tell. Is that her gun on the other side?
I don't know if that's it.
No, it is. All right, her gun is on the other side, but it doesn't matter. She still is not at the ready and has her hand up in her vest while standing next to the person who she should actually have her hand on. But I do correct myself because the gun is on the opposite side. Now you're walking through the crossroads of the world. Adjusting his pants. Let's all cross the street together.
So now this guy's at the substation.
There's no control of this person who is admitted to being an escaped prisoner.
Yeah, no, I think that you have to take a little bit of custody. The person's under investigation. I don't know necessarily if I would have walked him all the way back to the Apple store either, or I might have sent a couple officers to go back to the Apple store. Maybe the patrol supervisor, I would have said, go back to the Apple store and find out who's working there and get the story for me. I don't necessarily think that a cuffed prisoner, especially a front cuffed prisoner, needs to be walking in the middle of Times Square parading around with 5 officers around them. So I think at that point, I don't necessarily think the officers were at fault. I think the supervision failed at that point, because if the desk was notified, if somebody now, obviously the 4 cops are going to say, "Hey, we're going to go take this person back down to the Apple Store to verify, in fact, that the person the officer in Apple Store let this person go or this person escape." No, we're not doing that. Two officers, get the patrol supervisor here. Let's start an investigation. I mean, that's what I think should have happened. I don't think we're not in the position of doing a Thanksgiving Day parade here, So
Yeah, but listen, I don't know if anybody can disagree with me that this guy should have been rear handcuffed and secured. And when you're gonna walking them to the substation, I don't have a big deal. It looked like they were a block away or so from the substation. The sergeant probably came over there and told him to bring him to the substation, and I'll meet you there. Or
did he
not
meet
over
them?
the air,
I thought he
phone.
met them at the substation.
Who, the sergeant?
Right?
No,
No.
he walked up to them in the street.
Yeah.
He walked up to them into the street. They walked him to the substation.
No, all right, my
They
bad.
surrounded him.
Yeah.
As we're going to see in the next video that we're going to watch, he could have very easily ran past them.
Yeah.
And gotten away. So Michael M. is also saying, I believe you got to the 7-0 after I got promoted to sergeant in 91. I'm not that old. I came on in 85. You look older than me. I feel older than you probably too. But yes, I got to the 7-0 in the beginning of 94. I got on the job in 93. I got to the 7-0 in 94. Sleepy Joe says Midtown North FTU. That's what I'm assuming.
Looks like it, yeah.
Because they're just so crisp with their leather.
Oh, look, Joel Ramirez, great point right there. Great point.
And I'm going to stick up for Marlon. Marlon was a very active cop. He earned his way into the Intelligence Bureau and earned his detective shield. So he's off. We don't want Marlon to get hooked. Snake is saying you can't make it up. Where's the comment somebody said?
I got a new military time. Otherwise, Hard-X Score is going to yell at me. It's 17:57. Joel Ramirez, excellent point.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, we didn't see it. We didn't see it.
We didn't see it, but the video did cut. So it wasn't a live. The video didn't carry straight through. He edited the video before he put it up. But it is a great point. And Michael M., it took way too long for them to do anything. What if the cops needed assistance?
Yeah, right. That's a good point too. What if that police officer was hurt in the Apple Store, or even maybe out front of the Apple Store, and the guys in the Apple Store didn't know, overcome or pushed down? I mean, another great point. Yep.
They walked them back like they were on a date. So, listen. They're new. Again, we're going to Monday morning quarterback here. That's what we do a lot of times. We give our executive perspective on incidences that are posted online or in the newspaper or on the news. Monday morning quarterbacking is not a bad thing because we're not doing it. We're not doing it to hurt anybody. We're not doing it to be excessively critical. We're pointing out things that we're seeing in these videos that frankly scare us sometimes. Like the next video scares me that we're going to show. Frankly, scare you sometimes, but also just pointing out things that you can be mindful of next time or somebody else watching the show might be mindful for. One of the things that Rob and I discussed when we were talking about bringing the show on was that we wanted to give our perspective and talk about instances that may not be the most positive incidences and try and put a positive spin on it in that we could help the rank and file out there to do their job better, safer, and even, keep themselves administratively safe also by talking about things from our perspective. And when we break down these videos, that's what we're doing. We're not beating up these officers. It doesn't matter if that, like I said, if that was a female or a male. She should not have had her hand up inside her vest when she's standing next to a suspect who you don't have any clue what is really going on. Was he compliant? Yes. Was he calm? Yes. Did he tell a convincing story? Yes.
Hey,
But you have to take control. You're the police. When you're at the police incident, you're at a police scene, you have to be in control.
also, I mean, Sleepy Joe brings it. Like, where's the field training officer? Okay. And also, as young police officers or anything, if something bizarre like that happens, don't be afraid to call for the patrol supervisor. All right. You know, that's what they're there for. You know, I know, years ago you didn't call a sergeant for anything. You probably call the senior police officer or whatever, and work it out that way. But nowadays, the supervisor, they want to be notified for anything. So if I was those 4 cops and this individual came up to me, I would have been like I would have held that person, like you said, probably would have rear cuffed him because obviously there's something up. I might even done a quick a frisk just to make sure there was no weapons because I don't know at that point. And then I would have definitely called the patrol supervisor and said,
And
hey,
rear cuffed him.
and yeah, absolutely rear cuff him.
You
Yeah.
had enough cops there to be able to maintain him, uncuff one side, have him turn around, put his hands behind his back, and do it. And Hood Mayor is saying, why would you go to the police if you did something wrong? He didn't think he did anything wrong. We don't think he did anything that wrong, but he articulated a crime of trespassing. This officer put handcuffs on, hardcore, the FTO with 6 months more.
Yeah.
And like Marlon says, it's an after-action review, and that's exactly what we're doing.
Yeah.
We're not doing it to be hypercritical. We're doing it to try and help others.
Hey, if that guy was smart, he would have went to one of those police, detective stores or something there in Times Square and just bought a handcuff key right there. But he didn't. No.
92 Charlie, can't agree with you more. And again, the next video is going to highlight it once more. So yeah, let's get those likes, shares, subscribe. We're coming up on an hour. So hit the like, share, and subscribe buttons. Get the algorithm going for us. And then our bad, thank you, $9.99 to the podcast. Today it's a Diet Dr. Pepper. The Stop and Shop was out of Diet Coke. I don't understand. That place is always out of Diet Coke. So why wouldn't they stock more? If they're always out, why wouldn't they just stock more? I don't know. So I'm with the Dr. Pepper today. And I don't have my Twizzlers.
No Twizzlers.
I'm out. I was prepping for the show. I ate the last one.
Oh, be Jesus.
Well, we'll get to your question. Our bad super chat. We'll get to that question later on. Yeah. So let's see. So just to go through to catch up on the comments. You're right, Phil. I know it, but I can't help myself. All right. Anything else on this incident? Because
I mean, just like we said, you want to make sure that if it's weird enough, bring it up, bring it to your supervisor, get them involved. I hope they weren't involved, because if they were involved, they made some serious mistakes there. So if you have a prisoner and you have it's your prisoner, that's your buddy for the next 8 hours until they're lodged or whatever. So if you took somebody into custody, they're your custody.
100%. So yeah, again, we don't know. We're going on with information that we were given to by this reporter on what happened at the Apple store. We were able to confirm some things, but like I said, we'll say that that's what happened without identifying anybody. We talked about what happened in the Apple store and how that's just mind-blowing. But then also these very weak tactics by these young officers that we don't want anybody getting hurt. That's why we're talking about it. So let's move on. The 120, like a week and a half ago, puts out a post. Last night, the 120 public safety officer, Sergeant Velez, Officer Abdello, and Officer Vukovic put their lives on the line, effecting an arrest for an individual in possession of this loaded firearm. Kudos to them. They took a loaded firearm off the streets of Staten Island that could have taken someone's life. Looking at this post, you say, kudos, that's great. And you know, it gets spread. Other people put it up on other threads and everything else. Now, I used to love these Twitter shots. I used to do them myself when I was a commanding officer. I did them when I was a borough commander in Housing Borough Bronx, Queens. I got a Twitter handle up there. And I used to put out the great work of the men and women from my PSAs. I used to reward them with Commander's Days, with, you know, golden 28s. For those who don't know, it was, you know, photocopy of a 28 on gold paper, and I'd sign it. And basically, I can't give them a day because you only have limited number of days to give out, but you can give it to somebody. It's signed by me. So if they want a day off, they're going to get the day off. They have to use their own time, but they're pretty much going to get off because it's signed by the borough commander. I used to send letters to my guys all the time. I would give out little trinkets. I used to give out these pens, NYPD Parker pens.
Gave out pens or Twizzlers?
No, I used to give out pens. I used to
I
pens.
All right.
And then if you got a pen already and you continue to do more great work, you'd get one of my challenge coins. But you know, I firmly believe in putting out the great work because we're so quick to criticize, right? We have to be as quick or quicker to promote the great work and praise the great work of the men and women that are out there doing God's work. Now, you see this sergeant in this picture. Where are his hands? This over the vest, and don't get me wrong, I had one as an executive. These over the shirt vest carriers, they're convenient, but what I'm seeing with the way all these cops just hang out with their hands up there when they're talking to people scares me.
It's going to be a hard thing to stop because I'll tell you what, I've done it myself. I've been on barricades and wearing a heavy vest for hours, and eventually my hands end up in the front here just to hold me up for a little while. But it's very hard to get away from that. I agree. It probably doesn't look professional, and it's not a spot where you can tactically get to any of your equipment right away. But it's definitely going to be something very hard to get away from.
No, I agree. I agree with you 100%. Hardcore is respectfully disagreeing. He said the social media posts is a death of the job. It depends on how they're handled. I don't have a problem with a post like this. I don't have a problem with certain community posts. But when it's just self-promotion posts and it's all about you and what you're doing to try and get yourself out there, I'm totally against it. You know, overdoing it and posting, you know, 5-10 posts a day, totally unnecessary. But when you have officers that are doing a great job, they love it for the most part. Most cops love it. They used to
what I hated when COs would put out a post that the traffic safety officer was on 106th Street and 3rd Avenue handing out DWI information cards. Really?
I never even saw that post. A post like that.
I've seen it. It's like ridiculous. Are you freaking kidding me? I don't care. That's the fact that what happens is I think what I saw and what I hated about the social media was like it became competitive on how many people could put out certain posts. And, you know, did we put something out today? Oh, we don't have anything. Oh, go stand on the corner. You can see some of these were staged. Like, go take a picture on the corner of that, and oh, Officer Jones is on the foot post, and look how good he looks. Blending with the community. No, that's BS. All right, that post, when you bring a gun collar in, you make a good rest, you solve a burglary problem. Those are posts that you put out. Don't give me Officer Jones is picking flowers and cleaning up the graffiti. I don't really care, right? That's where it got stupid.
Yeah, you had to do certain posts and everything else. Like, if there was a big operation with downtown and everything else, like a traffic operation, you would do a post like that. You're doing tow operations, do things like that. Tow operations, you're doing posts because what you're doing is you're letting the community know that you're responding to their complaints, things like that. But
you could do that at a community meeting, though. Couldn't you do it at a council meeting?
No, you can, but you have a broader audience if you have people following you on Twitter. I'm not saying to do posts like you're saying. Like,
I know.
Like that. The problem is that you have to be careful who's doing your posting, because for the most part, the CEO is not doing it him or herself. They have social media offices, like usually it's the community affairs that are putting out the post. They have to speak in the first tense of the CEO, so you got to be careful. But I was always a big proponent of putting out these types of posts. But that being said, you also have to be careful, and you have to vet the situations, because you don't want to highlight work and then kind of get caught off guard when something goes south. Like, every gun collar, when I was a borough commander, because when I was a CO of a precinct, we didn't have body-worn cameras, right?
Oh, you got to look at TC's post. Look what here's Sergeant Merritt patrolling the Penn Station bathroom. that would have been a good. Now that was one I would have respected. Oh man.
Yeah. So I always reviewed the body-worn camera footage of every gun collar in the PSAs under my control, right? Michael M saying that 112 is a busy shop. It absolutely is a busy shop. This incident, from the video, I'm going to say happened in the Stapleton houses. So let's take a look at the video. Let's take a look at the video, and then we'll discuss. Where'd the video go? And we'll discuss this video after, because this video scares me. Sorry, I had to mute it for the sound. We'll get kicked off of YouTube.
He did. You know what he did? He did a Scatterboo move. That's one of the new Giants running back. Like he did an excellent running move right there. So I have a few things. I don't if you want me
Go
to jump
ahead.
right in. I just said, first of all, that police officer that he runs by, the one with the bun in his hair, he's leaning against the building, right? He's not paying much mind. They let somebody come up behind them. Like that person, I don't know if he was part of that investigation or not, but the person behind them should have been either told to move or get in front of them with that other guy.
And
And
he walks up during the investigation.
yeah, how does that happen? Keep moving.
We don't know. We can't tell from the body worn camera if he was off to the side for a while they're talking to this guy, but then they allow him to just totally
Come up
in.
behind you like that? No way. That's terrible. That's terrible. Your eyes aren't even on that guy. And then at one point the same officer looks to the left, and then all of a sudden the perp makes a bolt for it. So you know what? You got first, and again, like you said earlier, what 92 Charlie saying, the hands in the vest. That's one part where I would say you got to be on the ready, okay? Because your hands ain't coming out fast enough there. You got to be able to grab them, and there should be no means of egress for this person. We've seen this before, right? We saw this in the scooter incident, right? Where the individual is taken off in a scooter. Everybody has this lackadaisical attitude. They just think everybody's going to be compliant, and it erupts and now into a foot pursuit. Hey, and TC's right. He did get through the line a lot better than Scottaboo, but Scottaboo's been doing real well, so I can't complain. So
right, and hardcore, he's being a little extreme, but he's being realistic. It's a miracle it didn't line up at his LOD funeral. He was real talk.
Absolutely.
Pete Fuselli, again, finest unfiltered family, bad command presence, no command presence, none. And I'm gonna say. We don't know for 100%, but there's 3 people in the podium picture with the gun. It's a public safety team. The other 2 are identifiable. Both the police officers in the podium picture. So I'm gonna take another assumption here that the body worn camera is of the sergeant, because there's 3 of them. The other 2 officers are on video. And where are the sergeant's hands? Even though you're on body worn camera, you can tell his hands are in his vest because his fingers are covering part of the body worn camera view. I mean, there's no situation awareness. The officer to the left in the view, right?
So Sammy's asking if I ever considered a man bun, and I have not. No, and I don't think I ever will.
All right. So you have this officer here standing there with his hands up in his vest. This guy's moving around too much. This officer has got his fingers interlocked, crossed on his chest. Is he at the ready? Is he in the ready position? Is he in the interview stance? Not at all. It continues. The sergeant's got his hands up on his chest because it's covering the body worn camera. Now you see this officer's attention is brought to the side where this other guy comes walking up. There's 3 of them there. Why isn't he stopping that guy from coming past them and telling him, go the other way, go down the staircase over there?
Immediately, yeah.
Right? He sees the guy coming. We don't know if he was there all along, but the guy's on the move now because here he comes. He turns his attention back to the perp.
Well, here's the other guy leaning on the wall right now.
Leaning on the wall, smiling at the guy walking up. Now he's like joking with the guy that just walked into their investigation. While the sergeant is about to take off this guy's backpack because the guy don't want to let him into the backpack. So how are you not raised up about that? There's music, so we can't hear what's being said. There's music that covers what's being said. And this is leaked body worn camera. This wasn't released by the police department. I don't know how it got out, right? But it was up on Instagram. So now his hands, even with this guy, the second guy now coming into the picture, he's still leaning up against the wall with his hands in his vest. Now, what's wrong here? Nobody's even looking at the second perp. Well, I don't want to call him a perp. The second individual that has come into their zone of safety.
Yeah, because you don't know at this point, is he a distraction? Does he know that other person? Is he creating a gap right now?
Right? You can't see it under the video, but 92 Charlie, this perp was looking all around. You could tell he's going to make a move.
Yeah.
I agree with you 100%. I agree with you 100%. So hands in the vest, back to the second individual. This guy's now taking a step towards the other officer. So now he's stepping away while he's taking off the one side of the backpack. And this guy is still not in any kind of interview stance. Boom. Because you got your hands in your vest. You're not ready. You're not in the interview stance.
And who sees that?
You're not waiting, and he sees it.
Yeah. The bad guy sees that.
And the other guy had his hands there too. And he squeezes through. And I've been on these walkways in the Stapleton houses. And I think TC has too, because he's talked about it, right? They're very narrow. There wasn't a lot of room for him to squeeze through. But this officer having his hands up here, they're just and now you're running. What if this other guy had a gun? The second guy that you let encroach into your safety zone. So now you have anything else up to this point?
No, I mean, you can see the tactics are piss poor.
So now this, I believe, is the sergeant. It's a good thing he held on to the backpack, because that's where the gun was probably. We don't know for sure if it was on his person or in the backpack. I'm going to assume it's in the backpack just by his actions. They run out the front door. The two officers run out the front door after the perp. What does the sergeant do? Let me go out this way. He goes out the back to cut him off. Or tries to. And it didn't work out too well.
Yeah.
Never split up. Never split up by yourself away from your partners. Tactical suicide.
Yeah, the whole thing was poor, very, very poor tactics. Like 92 Charlie says, is a horrible, horrible situation that they put themselves in. They created that problem. They could have easily taken a higher road, like Pete talked about, take that command presence, and they should have been able to control that situation. But there was very complacency. Maybe they thought that because the perp was talking was nice, it was able to talk to them, and they let their guard down. It was terrible. And absolutely 100%. Don't go away from your partners, because you don't know what you're going to encounter. You should always stick together.
Yeah. Hey, listen, I used to tell people all the time, because I'd watch videos and I had incidents where people would do things that weren't tactically sound. And I would either personally instruct them, or I'd call the ICOs or the COs and say, listen, take a look at this video and just address it. Nothing official. To me, that's what the body-worn camera was about. It was about having the ability to look at these things, review these things, and use them for training to help people to stay safe. Not to nitpick, not to hammer people. I had people that, weren't the most politically correct, that got hooked with their language and everything else. And again, you call up the CO and say, listen, take a look at this, talk to the guy.
Oh, yeah.
Tell him not to get hooked.
No,
same thing. I used to look at, if anybody had multiple CCRBs, the rule is you have to come down to the borough and you have to talk to the borough XO. I didn't have an XO for most of the time, so I would have to speak with these officers with multiple XOs. But I would look at their body-worn camera. But I wouldn't just look at the body-worn camera associated to the one CCRB. I'd look at 10 other body-worn cameras of that officer, because I wanted to see how that officer handled themselves on the regular. They may have had a bad day. This person might have hooked them. It might have been a difficult situation, whatever the case may be. I want to get a feel for that officer if I don't know them. So I'd look at 10 videos besides the CCRB video and then bring them in, right? So, but again, it's a training thing. It's not a discipline thing. It's turned too much into a discipline thing. CCRB has weaponized it, but that's another rabbit hole, right? But here, you're looking at this and you're saying, wow, these guys got a gun. They're going to get a medal, right? They're going to get praise. They're going to get cop of the month or whatever the case may be. But in reality, they got lucky. They got lucky because if they think that they did a great job here, it's scary. It's scary. They need to look at this, be sat down, and do frame. I don't like frame by frame analysis because you got to be in the moment. You have to be everything else. But looking at it the way we're looking at it and just pointing out these tactical deficiencies, they need to have a gut check. And hopefully they're good enough that they can look at it and go, wow, I'm not doing that anymore.
They're on the public safety team, so I would have thought that they would have deployed a little bit better tactics because they're supposedly interacting with people all the time and taking, guns off the street and doing different things. So, clearly terrible tactics. They need to definitely use that video as a training video and show other officers. You could blur out the faces. I mean, I guess eventually it does get out who that person is based on, like you just said, the building, the familiarity with the grading and the identification. But those are things that, or you could also replicate that with actors in another location and then put it out and say, what do you guys think about this tactic? When I did the re-engineering when Bratton came back, when Bratton 2, it was about training. And I emphasized training videos and utilizing body-worn camera, utilizing other incidences, whether it was within the NYPD or within the country, and show those so people learn and see about other tactics and know what to do. So, I mean, the problem is here is a lack of training. And really a lack of supervision. Like, that sergeant should have taken control. That sergeant is the one, to me, that is like interviewing the perpetrator, taking the bag. Why wasn't he's not supervising when he's acting as one of the police officers? Hey, Ron, you take the bag off of that guy. Rob, hold that guy. Make sure he doesn't go anywhere, and then you supervise. Because there's no supervision there. That to me is the problem. It's the same thing. When I go back to the Apple store, no supervision there. I say here, there's no supervision. If he's the sergeant and that was the sergeant one, body one camera, and he was the one there, take control of that situation. That's your job. Remember, we spoke about this on a couple podcasts a while back. You can't have a sergeant engaged unless he specifically has to help his police officers. That sergeant should be sitting back, looking at, I hate the words totality of the circumstances, but looking at the full picture and then giving supervisory direction to the officers. That's what the officers want. They want supervisory direction. They'll do it. The cops will 100% do whatever you ask them to do, but you got to give them that. Don't try to train as like, hey, watch me and this is how you do it. No, get their heads in the game and let them think about it. Because when the two cops are watching the sergeant do stuff, they're watching a show, and that's all it was to them. They weren't engaged in that.
So I'm going to address Scott Wagner, Detective Spanish Harlem's comment, and then I'm going to respond to you. These newbies have no clue about tactics. Is it the lack of training? I think it's a lot of things, and one of the biggest things that we talk about on this show and the whole platform is the mass exodus and the loss of experience and experienced members and senior cops to teach and show the younger cops how to do things safely. And now, when you don't learn as a cop how to do it safely, you become a supervisor. you don't have the ability, you don't have the knowledge, the wherewithal to train your guys to do it safely. We talked about this in the past, right? I call it the impact effect, where cops stop thinking for themselves and stop working amongst themselves, and everything was team led, this, that, and the other thing. But as far as this, like, Eric will tell you, and he says it on his show all the time, that he did an after action after every incident, after every arrest, right? They would sit down, they go over the body-worn camera, they talk about what they did good, what they did bad, what they should have done, what they should do better next time. And I know for a fact he's done it because I've sat through them. He's not just talking. I've sat through them. And you have to take the ego out of it. You have to look at it objectively and say, okay, like here, I got lucky. I personally don't believe that this sergeant is sitting down with his cops and reviewing body-worn camera with them, because if this is how he's acting with his cops and how he's responding with his cops, I don't see him correcting improper tactics because he's a part of it.
No, and like I've said in the past, ESU has their after action right at the back of the large rescue truck after every job. And there is no rank there. I've been yelled at. I've been yelled at on the floor with ESU. You can't take it to heart. When you're talking about tactics, you're talking about saving lives and protecting each other. So there's no rank structure. I've gone in entries into apartments, when the team went in, when the ESU team went in on a warrant. And if I was the last guy in, which I usually was, if something happened and they needed help, I would help. It's not like, but that's part of your job to do that. But it's also part of your job to take criticism. Okay. I don't do everything 100% right. And a lot of times, police officers and sergeants, lieutenants, all the way above don't. So you have to be honest to yourself and say, and accept the criticism and then move on. And it's not disrespectful in any way. It's saying, hey, you shouldn't have done this, and you should have done, and you should have been over there. All right, I get it. You have to be able to one of the things in the ESU is to adapt and overcome. So that's what you have to do.
100%. 100%. And Philly, the guy is saying that he believes it was the gun was in the waistband. That's why he decided to run. Maybe not. We don't know. Maybe he knew that they had the bag and they're going to get the bag, so I'm going to get the hell out of here because the gun's in the bag. We don't know where the gun was. But RDV is saying suspect had already decided he was going to run. He saw the officer's hands were occupied, adjusting his vest, giving the perfect opportunity to. The guy who's sizing up the cops the whole time.
100%. Yeah.
100%. He was sizing them up.
And you can see that in his eyes. You can watch 100%. That when he's looking around. That's one of the cues. You got to look for that. Why is he looking around? What is he looking for?
He didn't even make the run when they were distracted by the other person coming in.
No, he waited.
He waited.
Yeah. Yep.
Simply they thought that they had the situation under control, not knowing that this perp was mentally ahead of them. Major lack of situational awareness. 100%.
True. Yeah.
8311. No defensive stance and no, but hands up in the vest, not problematic.
You remember that? You used to blade your body. You're supposed to blade your body.
The interview stance.
Yeah.
Put your gun side back.
Yeah.
It just. Joel Ramirez is saying they nitpick and give out discipline. I agree with you. A lot of people do. And I don't agree with it. I didn't do it. I was against it. I intentionally would sit in on the 4-stat meetings and be a voice to stand up for my members when they would try to nitpick on things. And once they knew that I was actually watching these videos, was aware of these videos, and wasn't just, sticking up for my guys, that I was able to articulate the facts, they backed off. But you have to have a boss that's willing to do that.
Well, they used to make you watch them because I remember they were timestamping them, and they knew who. I would go down to those force meetings, and they knew that you watched it or not. They would bring it up if there was times where guys didn't watch a lot of them, and they'd be like, "Why aren't you watching these videos? You should be watching them." So, and you're right, it helps the police officers by watching them. I remember one time in SOD, they were looking at a video and they were like, "Oh my God, the tactics are so bad or whatever. We don't know if it should be discipline or something else." And they're like, "Hey, Chief, come on inside and watch this." I said, "I'm not going in and watching it." I said, "You guys they gotta decide what you're doing with it first, because I'm not gonna go in and look at it and then make it my decision. This should be your decision." But eventually, we just went for retraining. So.
Yeah, no, I agree with it. I imagine any senior cops on patrol now don't want to commit themselves to helping the younger cops, unfortunately, sad to say. I don't know. I don't know. There's not a lot of senior cops out there. I agree that there's a mentality of being hands off, not being proactive, going out there and doing what we used to call God's work. Not a lot of people are doing it. So, and again, before I left and when I got hurt, I would talk to the guys and say, I don't know how you're still doing it with everything that's up against you. You know, and yeah, Joel Ramirez is saying it's a handout gun collar by the supervisor. Like you said before, Rob, the supervisor was doing everything. Those guys were just hanging out. They were just hanging out. One guy's like this, one guy's like this with his hands in his vest. And the sergeants, we can't hear what he's saying because the audio had music that I had to mute because of YouTube rulings. But he was doing it all. Like you said, he should have been, he should be, these guys are public safety, right? So they're supposed to be the more proactive, sharper cops in the command. And the 120 has, I'm sure, sharp cops. It is a busy place. Right, even though they split off, past West Brighton, Mariners Harbor and everything else. That part of the 120 is now the 121. It still has Park Hill, Stapleton, West Brighton, other parts of Staten Island that are very violent at times and has a lot of crime. So you should learn. He should have the confidence that his guys will be taking control of these scenes. And they should be controlling the season. Like you said, he should be standing back and giving directions if needed. Right?
Yeah. No, you can't supervise if you're doing it in the middle of the operation, right? So.
Just trying to catch up over here again.
So, I mean, they're all, yeah, they got to go off the street, and yeah, they were lucky. That's the big thing. So I just hope that they learn from this. Like we've said in the past, where we saw the other video where the officers confronted the individuals on the scooter. You can get lucky, but God forbid your luck runs out. So you got to make sure if you train and good tactics, I think you will definitely be luckier.
Somebody asked in the chat to run through the. I'll run the video one more time from start to finish, just so you can see it, because we did chop it up. I'll run it one more time. Just watch it, people. Please watch it. See what we're talking about. Now that we've discussed it, in your mind, if you weren't sure, if you're a junior officer and you're watching this, because we know that a lot of active members do watch this. I know that a lot of younger officers watch it. Senior officers watch it as well. I get approached out, sometimes when I'm around, people come up and they talk to me, but just watch the video, please. Listen to what we're saying. Listen to what people in the chat are saying, that, retired officers, senior officers in the chat are talking about. We're not doing this again to beat these cops up at all. I commend them for being out there. I commend them for proactively stopping people and taking this gun off the street. But I want them to be safe. I want them to do it safe, use proper tactics, and I don't want them to get hurt. That's what it's about. It's not about beating up cops. It's not about being, anti-police or anti-cop, because we are far from that. I think that our reputations precede ourselves, where that is not who we are. And if anybody says differently, let's look let them look in the mirror, or let other people look at their careers and tell us why they have an issue with either one of us. All right. But let's watch the video real quick. That's far enough to go. Yeah. Anything else on this? We move on. I hate,
No, you just got to keep your head in the game. That's all. We've spoken about it before. Whether you're off duty, on duty, you got to keep your head in the game because something can always happen around you. So you have to, pay attention and never get lackadaisical, especially when you're addressing a perpetrator or a possible obviously they stopped him they suspected him of some crime, right? So no matter what, let's not lean on the wall. Let's not have our hands up on our vests. Let's be ready to take the appropriate police action. I mean, you have to protect yourself. You got to protect your partners.
and Lily, that was his radio. His radio was I guess when somebody was speaking on the radio, it was lighting up. That was his radio on his belt. And I can't disagree, hardcore. That Phil the Heater guy, Inspector, no one's beating him up. I hope they watch this chat and learn something, and I hope Manbone gets a new do. But yeah, no, that's what it's about. It's about hopefully, they could. You have to have the ability to take the ego out of it, look at it objectively, and look at yourself, and say to yourself, "Wow, I got lucky." Like I said, so that's where. Joel, I'm going to disagree with you here. The second officer keeps his hand near his chest, ready to react. He only lowered his hands when the other person approached from behind. I'm going to disagree. He's not ready to react. When you're like this, you're not ready to react. He should have been in the interview position. They both should have had their bodies bladed. If they did, and their hands were not fingers crossed across his chest, and the other guy with his hands in his vest, that guy wouldn't have got away. They would have been able to grab a hold of that guy. If they had their bodies bladed properly.
Hey, if they stopped that guy because they thought he possibly had a gun on him, and I don't know what they stopped him for. I don't know if it was like a criminal trespass type of thing or whatever, but that guy should have been turned around. Don't give him the opportunity to be looking which way he can go and who's doing what. Keep his head, turn him around completely.
I guess they thought because they had him in that little alcove that they had him contained, which if they were tactically aware, they did.
Yeah, they could have.
They had him triangulated, right? They had him triangulated. But they weren't situationally aware, and they weren't in the interview stance, right? You had three guys there. There's no way that guy should have got out. There's no way that guy should have got away. So, all right. Let's move on. We're an hour and 39 minutes in. Let's hit that like, share, and subscribe button. Get the algorithm going for us. We got almost 400 people watching right now, so we appreciate it. Those of you watching on X, jump on over into the YouTube. The chat is more interactive. It's a lot easier. You can follow us on X at The Exec Perspective. Shoot us a direct message, and we'll get back to you. We appreciate the support, and let's move on. All right, let's get Pat in here. Welcome, Patty. This cops are lucky this one resulted in a foot pursuit, not a LODI or LODD, which is line of duty injury or line of duty death. the perp sized them up from the beginning, is what I'm sure he was going to finish it. And that kid TC, that kid put the run in gun run. That was a good one, TC. I'll agree with Phil. All right, let's move on. There was 2 instances, one in New York City, one in Milwaukee. The one in Milwaukee is getting a lot of social media attention. They were both police-involved shootings, and so we're going to discuss them. And what happens a lot when there's a police-involved shooting is automatically the family goes on the offense against the police, doesn't want to hear the quote-unquote police narrative. The police are lying. The altar picture, the pictures of the altar boy comes up and everything else. And you see that so much. There were 2 instances. Again, there's one in the NYPD that happened in the Bronx. And originally it came over as MOS being shot, a sergeant being shot, grazed in the head. And that wasn't the case. The case was that he actually fell over when the perp fled the building and knocked into him, knocked him down to the ground, and he got a head injury and was moved to the hospital. So this is the gun that was involved that the perp had. Officer suffers a head injury in capture of Bronx teen who'd allegedly robbed mom at gunpoint. What happens is that this perp, who was released in January for attempted murder involving a 15-year-old, he was 17 years old at the time. He was released on $35,000 bail. At least he had bail, right? And he's also been a victim of a shooting. So this kid was active with the police and negative. Now, there's no body-worn camera with this, but the whole thing is that this incident happens. What we do have is we have the press conference that Chief of Patrol Phil Rivera gave afterwards. So let's take a listen to this. Let him describe what happens at the scene of this incident.
Good evening. I'm Chief of Patrol Philip Rivera. I'm joined by Chief of Detectives Joe Kenny, Chief of Force Investigation Division Chief Rohan Griffith, and Commanding Officer Patrol Bureau Bronx Chief Ben Gurley. I'm here to brief you on an incident that occurred earlier this evening in the Williamsbridge neighborhood of the Bronx. This incident demonstrates the dangerous situations that our officers confront every single day. The information I'm about to provide is preliminary and subject to change. At approximately 9:16 p.m., officers from the 4-9 precinct responded to a 911 call reporting a domestic robbery at 791 Van Nest Avenue. The male caller stated that his son had robbed his mother and older brother at gunpoint. When the officers responded to the scene, the father said he believed the suspect, his son, was now located at 1015 East Gun Hill Road and in possession of a firearm. Officers and the father then went to that address and established a perimeter around the residence. They knocked on the door and made contact with the suspect, who claimed he was not the individual that they were looking for. The father recognized his son's voice from inside the home. At that point, the responding officers attempted to keep the door closed while they waited for ESU for a barricaded perp. Officers then heard 3 gunshots, and the suspect was able to open the door. The suspect fled through the front door, where he encountered officers positioned outside the door. A struggle ensued as officers attempted to take him into custody, and one officer fell backwards and hit his head. An officer then discharged a firearm, striking the perpetrator twice, once in the lower back and once in the right arm. Officers recovered a loaded firearm in a bag on his person. This incident is all shown on body-worn camera footage and footage from the building. The officer who sustained a serious head injury was immediately rushed to Jacoby Medical Center. Thankfully, he is currently in stable condition. The perpetrator was also brought to Jacoby Medical Center and is in critical condition as well. This incident is being investigated by our Force Investigation Division. The perp is known to this department and has a significant violent criminal history. Once again, our cops walked into a very dangerous domestic situation where they did not know what was on the other side of that door. Thankfully, our officers were able to apprehend the suspect, and our injured officer is expected to make a full recovery.
So there you have it. They respond to a domestic incident where it was supposed to be a gunpoint robbery of the mother, right? He's not there. They go to another location. The father's with them. Father says, the person answers the door, oh, he's not here. But the father tells them, yeah, that's him. That's my son. I know his voice, right? So they hold on to the door while they call for ESU when, they're making this out to be a barricaded job. So you take it, because that's your expertise. You take it from there, and let's just comment on this part before we get to the other part of the story.
Yeah. So if in fact they were holding the door, we years ago put ropes and wedges in every one of the RMPs on patrol, and that's so you can actually tie off the door. It was a simple slip knot that you could put over the doorknob, and then using the frame of the door, you use it to get leverage so that somebody can't pull the door open. So you maintain custody of the door. You're not standing in front of the door, and you can keep that individual in there and wait for the arrival of the emergency service unit. Now, I don't know if this individual was able to overpower the officers at the door, or they didn't get the rope up there in time. I mean, if you don't have the rope and wedge in your car, I would talk to somebody in the command and see if originally it was given out from Special Operations Division, but if you don't have that, you need to get it back in the RMP. It can save your life. And listen, don't get me wrong. There's been times when emergency service unit has tied off a door with a rope, and the individual was so strong he actually overpowered the officers and still pulled open the door. So it's not a guaranteed thing. But the fact that this individual was able to come out, fire 3 shots in the apartment and then make his way out of the apartment, then it became problematic, and obviously he pushed over the sergeant or whatever. So this was an individual, he had a mission to get himself out of that position. So
yeah, and the mother says, that he's had psychological issues. He was on medication, that she can't force him to take medication anymore. He's 6'4" or something like that, 200 and some odd pounds. She can't hold him down and force him to take his medication. So, here we have that problem of someone that's not getting the mental health help that they need. And unfortunately, they're involved in serious and violent activities where he was involved in an attempted murder. He was a victim of a shooting. So this guy was definitely on the radar of the NYPD, because we do track, so that people know, not only just, criminals, but we also track people that have been the victims of shooting, because it's an indication that they might just be hanging out with the wrong crowds. If you're the victim of a shooting, there might be a reason as to why, right? So the interesting part about that, and again, just to go back to your point, and if you said it, I missed it, I'm sorry. We don't know how dynamic this situation was. We don't know the time between when they were holding off the door and calling for ESU, the 3 shots were fired, and he exited the residence, was able to get the door open, and they exited, and he exited the residence and ran basically right into the sergeant, is what it sounds like, and went down. And then an officer fired shots, and he was shot in the lower back and in the arm or the leg. And so we don't know. We don't know that they didn't hold the door when Dad said, that's him. They called for ESU. The sergeant may have said, hey, go get the rope. We don't know. What we're saying is It's an option that's out there. That's a realistic option. It's not one of those pie in the sky things that, oh yeah, sure, we talk about it, but it's not realistic. I have seen it in action. I know you've seen it a ton of times. And I'm not even talking just the issue. I've seen the issue. The issue is the first thing they do, right? We talked about this before, right? They tie off the door and they pop the peephole. It's the first thing they do when they have any kind of barricaded job, and throw us all off the floor, right? Because we don't need to be there. They need to do their job. But we don't know the dynamics of it. So we're not criticizing, we're not Monday morning quarterbacking that they didn't do it because we don't know.
So you spoke about the people. I just want to tell, listen, I agree wholeheartedly with tying off the door if you're on patrol. The reason they take the peephole is to get eyes on, and what they do is they put a bunker up with a visible the shield with a viewing screen so they can see inside the apartment. I don't want cops taking peephole now. So
that is
don't do that.
Right. That is an ESU.
Because you're telling you're in the fatal funnel, and you're telling the bad guy exactly where you are when you're breaking that off. So
right. 100%. Thank you for clarifying that. That's an ESU move.
Yeah,
and like you said, that they're very well versed at it, and yeah, they have that ballistic bunker that they put up so they can look through before Taru gets there and is able to stick the the flexible camera in through. But yeah, so again, we're saying that these are options that are out there. They're realistic options that work very well. So for your safety, try to remember, again, part of the Monday morning quarterbacking is us trying to just, flip a switch that maybe we shouldn't do something a certain way, or maybe we can do something a different way to have a better outcome, a safer outcome in the future. Don't know. We didn't see the body worn camera on this, so we don't know 100% the time frame with it all. Quite possibly it was all in motion.
Yeah, it could happen very fast. Yeah,
very fast. So, and we're not saying to walk up to every job with the rope in your hand. That's not what we're saying. But it should be there. It's something that you should be checking for. And if you don't have it, your RMP coordinator through your ops coordinator should be trying to get it back into your RMP so that you do have it, because it is a very good piece of equipment. So
yeah, Joel Ramirez says the ropes are on back order. They probably are, or they're given to the violence interrupters.
No,
so
please. Yeah. Request an HNT and Taru, 100%. Sergeant, get on the air, and they're going to wait for they're not going to allow you to call for them. You call for them anyway. The squad's got to get on the scene, and the squad's got to actually make that notification. As ridiculous as that sounds, they don't think a uniform supervisor has enough knowledge to know that that's the right person, right? Joel Ramirez, Phil, the heat guy's answering Joel also. The ropes and wedges are locked in the admin lieutenant's office, so they're there for the at ivory time annually. I think that's going to be inventory time annually, which is not an untrue statement in a lot of places. That's why I'm saying, and what Rob is saying too, is we're telling you this so that if you're not aware of it, because you haven't seen them, because they're locked up for inventory time, ask about it. Say, where's the rope? Where's the wedge? We're supposed to have that in the car so that we can be safe on these scenes, right? But yeah, 100%. Sarge was probably requesting the duty captain. 100%. That's all in the same radio transmission, And so, all good stuff. So, anything else on, the presser or anything else? Because
no, I like that. Some people said that you need a 40-inch waist to do a press conference now. They're all.
Right.
They got to lead a little bit by example, but that's a whole nother story. So
that's a whole nother story. All right. But what the interesting part of this is that the mother of the victim, right, of the perp who's shot by the police, comes out publicly comes out publicly and says that they don't blame the cops, but is anguished over a lack of mental health care. So she makes a statement in this article, right? The mother of the teen suspect shot and critically wounded by police in a struggle, injured an NYPD sergeant said she doesn't fault the cops for doing their job, but anguished by the challenges she's faced by getting her son, who has long struggled with mental illness and anger issues, the help he desperately needs. Right? The quote later down goes, I'm not mad at the police for doing their job. That is their job. That's what they're supposed to do. I'm not going to condone or say my son didn't do anything wrong. He did something wrong, said the mother, who didn't want her name used. I just wish that it didn't have to end this way. This didn't have to happen. So for that, which is something that's very rare, nothing negative came out initially, and then the tone changed or anything. The mother came out with this statement right away. And so I commend the mother for having the fortitude to stand up and say, my son was wrong, and the police did what they had to do, and I don't hold any ill will. And that also helps to keep down the temperature in the community.
Yeah, no, I think that coming out like that after, I don't know whether or not they saw a body-worn camera or whatever, but knowing what happened at that job, that they came out, and they're 100% correct. The problem does lie within the mental health. I mean, we've seen it. I've seen it. I've been at meetings with people from City Hall, members of the department, and trying to get a handle on mental health. And to this day, it's still problematic. You can't arrest your way through it like the current administration doing. You know, Eric Adams having people go down into the subways and arresting people, homeless people, for just sitting in the subway. So there has to be, a better way to take care of people that have mental health issues, and it will eliminate some of these problems. And it, to me, and I've said it before in the past on these podcasts, it's not a response from health workers and non-police. I think either whether it's a co-response, which we have within the department, a co-response teams, but that's for after action and follow-up. But maybe some of these initial responses require both. But it's not up to an individual response to go for health workers to go there, because obviously if they're calling 911, there's an issue at hand, and they may need the police. If you look at the amount of EDP jobs that happen, emotionally disturbed person jobs within the city, and I think it's probably about 170, maybe over 200,000 a year. And the amount of times police officers have to discharge their weapons at an emotionally disturbed person, of which usually have a weapon in their hand, are very minimal compared to the amount of jobs that we handle. So I just think, though, they really do need to take another look at mental health and how we treat them. I think there's much better approaches to that problem.
No, I agree with you 100%. And the mother here hopefully becomes more of an advocate. Hopefully, she was able to step out and say this publicly. And again, it couldn't have been easy for her, because your first instinct as a parent is to defend your child, right? But you have to be able to say, when your child is wrong, your child is wrong. And this person stepped up and said that, but she's also, in saying that, she's bringing light to a very serious issue that needs to be addressed. And it's not a simple solution. Like you said, we're in the midst of a very heavily contested mayoral race here in New York City. And there are some crazy ideas out there about what should be happening with the mental illness and how they should be handled, and how the job should be handled by mental health professionals and not police, not a co-response like you talked about, just by that. And Eric, from the Finest Unfiltered family, from the Retired Unfiltered, there needs to be a proactive approach on mental health. When the police are called, we are far beyond intervention, and safety is a priority. It's 100% correct. there's different types of job, right? This was not a mental health call that they went on. This was a gun run. This was a robbery at gunpoint, domestic. So, this wasn't just an EDP job. He just happens to have, a mental health history. So it's very difficult. It's a very difficult situation. And again, I commend Mom for having, like I said, the fortitude to come forward and stand up and say, my son didn't do right. The police did what they had to do. So that's anything else on this job?
No, I think the police officers did a good job. They tried their best, and I do give a lot of credit to the mother for coming out and realizing that, identifying the problem. The problem doesn't lie with the police department. The problem lied with the mental health issues. So I commend her for doing that.
100%. So another incident happened last week in Milwaukee. And again, we're mostly NYPD. Our law enforcement is, experiences the NYPD. You have firefighting history prior to your law enforcement history. So we have a vast knowledge. I was an EMT, worked on an ambulance before. But law enforcement is law enforcement, right? There might be some different procedures, some different laws in different states that have to be abided by. But law enforcement is law enforcement, and the same things we see are nationwide. So we're going to touch on something that happened in Milwaukee and give our perspective on this. So there was an off-duty Milwaukee police officer who was on his way to work. We're going to show a video of the incident, but so he's got a dash cam. So we weren't able to ascertain if it's like a take-home unmarked car or how it works. And we have our thoughts about it. We'll explain that in a little bit. But he gets into a minor collision. They pull off to the side of the road. There's an altercation. The motorist of the civilian auto takes out a gun, pistol whips the off-duty. There's an exchange of gunfire, which leads to the death of the civilian perpetrator. So let's take a look at the initial news report of this incident.
We know right now, police say that off-duty police officer was wearing plain clothes and got into a minor vehicle accident right near 49th and Mill Road while on his way to work.
Police say he and the other driver got out of their vehicles to assess the damage, and that's when the chief says the other driver pulled a gun.
That subject proceeded to strike the off-duty officer in the face with his firearm. The off-duty officer drew his department-issued firearm, and the two individuals exchanged gunfire, and the subject was struck. The subject, a 26-year-old male, was pronounced deceased at the scene.
Relatives identified the man who died as Elijah Wilkes. That family shared this photo with 12 News. The officer who went to a hospital is on administrative leave. The police chief said he's watched video of the incident, and police policy requires the chief present that video to Wilkes' family in 2 days and to the public in 15.
The police union president releasing a statement after visiting the officer in the hospital. It reads in part, quote, "Our officer did exactly what any well-trained officer would do. He fought to survive." 12 News' Hannah Hilliard is joining us live right near the scene.
And Hannah, Wilkes' family is disputing the chief's account of what happened.
Oh, right, Derek and Deanna. So the family says that Wilkes was actually on his way to a funeral when this all occurred here this morning. Family and friends rushing to the scene out here, confused and upset with what police say transpired right here along busy Mill Road. Dozens of close friends and family of this man, 26-year-old Elijah Wilkes, gathered along an active police scene Thursday after learning an off-duty officer shot and killed their loved one following a chaotic chain of events.
Elijah's a very soft-spoken, well-mannered person. Good energy, outgoing, all about family and friends, not in the streets at all.
Police say a minor crash led to an altercation between Wilkes and the plainclothed officer, which escalated to a shootout. Wilkes' friends told 12 News they are not aware of him having a gun and dispute the information from police.
No, they're not telling the truth. That story they posted is not the truth. Quiet. Not the truth at all.
One witness who did not want to be identified told our James Stratton he heard an exchange of gunfire.
It was definitely a momentary pause between one gunshot and the return gunshots.
So you believe there were two separate guns?
Yeah, absolutely.
While a second witness told me a different version. They said that there was an exchange of gunfire. Did you ever see?
I heard one gun. I didn't hear two different type of gunshots.
The chief says per department policy, they will show the video they've obtained to the family within 48 hours. In the meantime, Wilkes' family and friends sharing their heartbreak.
He was a very good friend of my daughter's. I mean, was at my mom's house on a daily basis, eating with us and everything. And to know that he's lying down there in that street right now, I'm just heartbroken.
And Hannah, the officers on administrative duty.
Oh, right. So that officer with 21 years of experience on the Milwaukee Police Department is on administrative duty, which is Milwaukee Police protocol in situations like this. We also know that the West Dallas Police Department will be the ones to take the lead on this investigation.
Hannah Hilliard.
So there's the initial news report, and you see how the family is automatically saying that the police are lying. I watch that newscast and I see the broadcasters leaning a little left. What are your takes on the initial?
Yeah. I love when they always think our administrative position is like a punishment. I mean, it's usual protocol, right? First of all, it gives the police officers just involved in a shooting and took somebody's life, right? So obviously they're put on administrative leave just to kind of make sure that their mental acuity is okay and that they're feeling all right. I mean, it's definitely to protect them. So that in itself doesn't mean any admission of guilt. And I like we spoke about it earlier, I love the fact that one person that's interviewed can identify exactly what type of gunfire and what type of gun it came from. Like, oh, that wasn't the police officers. It was all the police officers' gun, because the other gun, I didn't hear another gun. It was different caliber. I mean, when was she going to get into the ballistics, the caliber, the velocity of each round? I mean, she was definitely, she had done her homework, I guess, and knew exactly what gun, because it could never be two guns. It couldn't be two 9mm guns with the same sound, right? It has to be one higher caliber or lower caliber. So all different types of, sounds that the gun makes. So yeah, I don't know, so I mean, to me, that newscast is they're looking to condemn the police officer. They were looking to spark some type of outrage and not wait for the whole story to come out. And then eventually the whole story comes out, right?
Yeah. So I agree. And, I do have to ask Eric, you got to clarify who's getting that spot on. We keep track. We're not sure who you're talking about. So, but, yeah, so that's how it all shapes out. And then per the Milwaukee Police Department's policy, right, the family is allowed to view the video within 48 hours. So let's take a look at the dash cam video that was taken from the off-duty officer's vehicle. And just keep in mind that, we had to stop it before the shots were fired, just because, again, rules on YouTube and violence, we show it get taken down if we show the actual shooting. So the video will stop just before the actual exchange of gunfire.
Fuck are you doing? I'm in the fucking lane.
So there you have. That's when there's the exchange of gunfire, and you see what happened. Just it's sad. It's sad. So I mean, a point to take into consideration also is that you always have to be aware, right, and prepared while you're off duty. When you're off duty, somebody said in the chat before, on his way to work, and work found him.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so what happens with this? So the family gets to see the video, and then the family comes out, and the family has their own press conference with their lawyer, with the civil rights lawyer. So let's take a look at that. And I had to cut this down because it was a long press conference. Oh, sorry. Sorry, guys. Not sure what's going on.
And oftentimes, I don't think I've ever come before.
Let's start it over.
But today I want to now take this moment to address what we did see. And again, this is something that oftentimes I don't think I've ever come before and did a press conference and said this, but we will acknowledge that we do believe that this officer-involved shooting was justified. What took place yesterday is the video that will be released by statute within the next 15 days. It's going to show that Elijah was coming up almost 47th and Mill Road, and there was a construction area in which he was trying to get into the left lane, and he kind of aggressively maneuvered into this left lane and essentially cut off the off-duty officer at that point. Obviously, the officer said some words that you're going to ultimately hear on the body cam. And that caused a slight collision in which the officer's vehicle collided with that of Elijah's. After they kind of got past the construction site, what we saw today was Elijah pulled over. The off-duty officer followed right behind. Elijah did get out his vehicle, as did the off-duty officer. Elijah did kind of point to the front end of the off-duty officer's vehicle, kind of alleging that you hit me and caused some type of property damage to the vehicle. And what we see next on the video is that Elijah did have a firearm. He does pull it out, and the video in which myself and his mother Pam did watch today is he does slap the off-duty officer with the firearm. After which the video does depict Elijah pointing the firearm at the off-duty officer, and the off-duty officer did respond what we believe in accordance with his training and did fire off several shots. Elijah then kind of is now running over to like the front of his vehicle at this time. And you see on the video that Elijah ultimately kind of pops up on the other side of the vehicle. At that point, there's another barrage of gunshots fired by the off-duty officer at that time. So, in sum, we do believe that the shooting, it was unfortunate, it was tragic. The loss of any life, we hope is preventable. But this family stands before you today acknowledging the officer's actions. And our hearts and our prayers go out to the off-duty officers family as well. I'm sure that he's going through a healing process. We assume that that was very tragic for him as well. This city needs to heal. Elijah was just 26 years old, and we have to be responsible for decisions that we make.
Wow. Amazing.
Yeah. I've never, in all my time, have seen a press conference like that. Usually things just go away. Family sees the video. They realize, all right, well, it is the way the police are portraying it. I've never seen someone come out, especially an attorney like that. So kudos to that family. Once again, kudos to that family for having the heart to come forward and hold a press conference like that to keep the community temperature down so that there's not an uprising, so that there's not any type of civil disorder based around the death of their loved one. Transparency, the fact that Milwaukee has this 48-hour rule, I think it's pretty good. And listen, but it could work on the other side too. If it's a bad shooting, it's a bad shooting, and the police better be ready to mobilize quickly if it's a bad shooting and the family gets to see it.
Listen, both sides got to own it, one or the other, right? So
100%.
here we have the civilian side; they're owning it. If the police have a bad shooting, they got to own it too. I just have a question because they talked about body-worn camera, but they also said the officer was off duty.
Yeah.
So I don't understand
He's talking about the
body-worn camera. I know it's a dash cam.
It's a dash cam because you saw the guy was in a t-shirt.
But then they don't have the 48 hours they're not
Any
obligated
video.
to release that.
The rule is any video. If they have any video evidence, and
the police have to release it, yeah.
They have
even
to release
personal video. Wow.
They have to let the family view it. That I'm telling you, I think that was an RMP. I think that was an off-duty take-home call because you can't see it in the video here, on the podcast. But when I was watching the video, after they get through the construction site and they're pulling over to the side, I know the lawyer said that he doesn't believe that the victim was aware that he was a police officer, and it didn't matter anyway. The lawyer even said that. I believe I saw like flashes or wigwags reflecting off the back of the car until the officer pulled over, put it in drive, and turned it off. So that may be a take-home unmarked police car. I don't know if they all get police cars or whatever. If it was an unmarked police car, because that looked like legitimate dash cam, not like one of those ones that you buy on Amazon.
No, and truthfully, everyone should buy one of those. I have one of those in every one of my cars, a front and rear camera. I've already witnessed an accident with somebody else, not myself involved. I've had on video a car coming the wrong way, and when up in New York, I had the cows. The cows broke out of a gate and they were all over the road, and I have it on video too. So they're a great thing. They capture a lot of video, and I think they're good to have, because it can save you in the long run. So we got a lot of questions from Arbit. Arbit, thank you so much. You've been very generous today, and we appreciate it. So
we'll get to your questions in a little bit. We want to get through this, but yeah, again, I think it's amazing that the family came forward like this. That they had the ability to not only recognize and acknowledge the wrongdoing of their loved one, but humanizing the police officer. In the end of that portion of the video, they put out their hearts and prayers to the officer who they knew must be going through a very difficult time. So on top of having to acknowledge the wrongdoing of your loved one, you're also humanizing the person that took his life and realizing that he took his life because he had to follow his training and he was protecting his own life.
Yeah, no, and I agree with what Hardcore is saying right there. The family tried to start a race war in the beginning, and then they did a complete 180 once the video disproved it. But I give kudos to the attorney as well, because it's not easy for a defense attorney or an attorney that's going to look for a major payday from a lawsuit to come out and clearly demonstrate that, based on what they witnessed on the body worn camera or the dash cam, that it was not the officer's fault. So, like I said, this is in a perfect scenario, because if you're wrong on one side, if the civilian is wrong, absolutely criticize. If the police officer is wrong on the other side, criticize. We both sides make mistakes, and both have to learn from our mistakes. So,
Yeah,
yeah,
I'm just
I agree.
trying to catch up on the comments a little bit. We had some nice comments in here. Somebody was saying, they're looking at the numbers. When you look at YouTube right now, on YouTube we have 66, but we actually have over 400 viewers on all the different platforms. And again, we encourage you to go over to YouTube, because the algorithm is better, and the engagement in the chat is easier for us. So we encourage anybody watching over on X, although you can comment, join us. Unless I put up the chat, it's not going to show. So, switch over to YouTube and jump on. Hardcore saying they didn't have a choice. They didn't do anything. They tried to lie at first. They're defending their family members. I don't know if this guy had a criminal history. It was never brought up in the Chiefs' initial press conference, and I don't remember reading anything about a criminal history. Obviously, he's carrying a gun, and he pistol whips him. Like, I know you looked into it, Rob, and in Milwaukee they have an open carry law, so we don't know if it was a legal gun. Nobody mentioned it was an illegal gun, but it becomes illegal when you use it in an illegal manner by pistol whipping somebody.
Yeah, you're not supposed to do that.
Yeah,
That's frowned upon.
Yeah. Yeah. So, listen, it's tough. It's tough. But
And that is a problem. Like Pat Donahue says, the problems, they do see a big payout, more often than not, and that's what the ultimate goal is. Are they really, I often wonder, are they actually concerned about the individual that was actually shot or killed, or are they just looking for that big payout? But, here they had to do the 180, like, Hard X Core said, because the video doesn't lie, right? So.
Yeah. And then, like I said, like I had said, the one thing that really captured me in this thing is, like Phil the Heater guy. It was a great thing that the lawyer humanized the officer and sent out a statement of feelings for him. This attorney is not a Ben Crump, and I agree.
Yeah, 100%.
Sleepy Joe saying we have the most stamina. Yeah, we didn't want to, but we're 2 hours and 24 minutes and we're not done yet.
It's funny you said, all right, let's speed through this.
Well, we kind of did. We ran long.
Did we?
Yeah, we ran long. We ran long on the other things, But so yeah, let's start wrapping it up. Let's get into. I don't have the
executive perspective. Ask her.
Executive. Let me bring that up. I didn't load that up. Sorry. So at this point, we're gonna go to Ask an Executive, our segment on this show where you have the opportunity to ask us questions on or off topic. A lot of times, people don't have the opportunity to have access to higher ups in the police department. Retired inspector myself, retired deputy chief, and Rob. So let's get. I got to scroll all the way back to 546 and get that first question that was up. So let's see if I can. We got a lot of conversation today. I love it, people. We love the engagement. We appreciate the engagement. And it's taken me a bit to get up here.
No, you had our bad too at 1741.
1741 before.
Yeah, that was
Oh,
1999 to the podcast. Yeah.
Super sticker. Hi execs, quick cue. I've been retired for a while, not NYPD, the smelliest side of the tunnels, LOL. I'm going to say that's Jersey. And noticing much facial hair. I feel it looks unprofessional and poses issues with SCBA and respirators. He corrected it to something else in a little while. Fit and seal. What's our opinions on that? There's two sides to that. There's the safety issue with your equipment that Rob you can speak to, and then there's the professional look. And I agree. I shaved for over 30 years every day, and I'm not a fan of shaving every day. And but I did it. I think it is a professional look. And Rob, if you want to touch on the second half of that.
Yeah, no, again, Arbed, thank you for your contributions today. Appreciate it. But 100%, when I was in charge of SOD and any issue, absolutely, you have to put on self-contained breathing apparatus. Especially in hazmat jobs. We responded to weapons of mass destruction jobs, suspicious powders. So you're getting in the C suit, which is basically the self-contained breathing apparatus, or it could be a respirator. So yeah, that fit and seal. What you don't see firemen with beards, right? There's a reason, because it breaks the seal, and that's what you don't want. Sometimes with the self-contained breathing apparatus, it has positive pressure, so it's always blowing air out. But particularly when you're using a respirator and you have a filter on the front, you're drawing air in. So if there's a seal's broken, yeah, you're going to draw in something, especially on a hazmat job. Especially suspicious powder. It could be anthrax. You don't want an inhalation hazard. So 100%, I don't believe beards should be at all acceptable within a department. I don't know if it'll ever go back. Obviously there are medical exemptions. I remember a lot of the black officers would get bumps, and they were granted exemptions.
Everybody gets that now. It's amazing.
Now the problem is
that's a skin condition that is specifically for people of color.
Right.
But all of a sudden, you saw the Irish guys with the bumps letter. Anybody can get a doctor to write a letter.
And somebody found something in the Bible that Jesus said, okay, don't shave. So that was that became a religion. But I totally disagree with it. I think it's totally I agree 100% with Arbed. It's unprofessional. It doesn't look good. And again, like Ron said, I shaved for 35 years, and I'm still not today too much, but I still shave. And no, do I like shaving? Absolutely not. But that was part of the job. That was one of the requirements of the job, and I did it. So.
Yep. All right, Sleepy Joe for Ask Executive later. Who determines when to dismiss a detail? What factors go into that decision? So the person that determines who dismisses a detail is going to be the incident commander, which is whoever the chief is that's running the detail, or it could be a precinct commander if it's a precinct level detail, whatever the case. And what factors go into that decision? Is everything done? Is everything over with? Is it safe? Do we need to keep a smaller part of the detail together for safety purposes, or is it time to go?
And I'll add one thing into that. There's a notification called down to operations, because operations has to make sure that there's nothing else going anywhere else in the city that they could use you as, use that detail as maybe a force multiplier somewhere else, or as a response to that. So that's also part of that the decision on who decides to dismiss the detail.
And that's legit, people, because one time I was the CEO of the 110 precinct, and we had a ton of details in the Flushing Meadows Corona Park. And one time I released a detail because it was over. It was a festival, and I didn't call it in. And then somebody's like, "Oh, you got to call the community affairs. Like, we have to call it in." I'm like, "All right, I got to call it in." And they wanted to redeploy our people to something that was going on in the Bronx, and I didn't have any people to redeploy. Luckily, I knew the executive that was working at the operations that day, and they let it slide. But from that point on, I learned that that's a legit notification that has to get made. You have any other time-stamped ones prior to going to the end now?
No, yeah, because Arbad, I think, also asked at 7:12 about the elevator keys, which they can answer that right off the bat. Yes, absolutely. ESU has them. A lot of the cops, especially in Manhattan, keep them on their duty belts so that they can use the elevator key to call the elevator down to their floor, and then they can use it to go to whatever floor they need to go. Just similar to the fire department. Absolutely, they definitely have them. They absolutely are handy tools.
All right. Now let's see if I can catch up towards the end. Questions that came in at the end. Hardcore saying, my wife's asking me again, what are you doing? She can't believe how long I'm watching this. I can't believe how long we're still doing this. 2 hours and 30 minutes into it, people, 31 minutes. We really appreciate your stamina for staying with us and staying engaged. We need the man on post-perspective segment. I'm not sure what that is. And then Class of 8311, thank you very much. Great show. Appreciate it. Appreciate your support. You're always here. You're always in the comments. I appreciate that. Watch this all day. TC wants to know, what the hell are gross mutton chops? TC, that's the gross mutton chops. It's the big old 1970s sideburns.
Come down like this, yeah.
All the way down to the front. And then Hardcore's German, so he only has to shave once a week. I wish.
I think that's still in the patrol guide, right? The gross mutton chops. That's crazy.
Phil stopped shaving the day he retired. I tried. Wife doesn't let it. Question 1. Pat. I have no idea what you're talking about, Pat. All right, Simply E. How common is it for a retiring chief of department to not get a walkout after decades on the job? Why do you think it didn't happen here? It is highly unusual. I don't know why it didn't happen. I know why he says it didn't happen. I did watch.
Why did he say?
I watched his interview on Sid Rosenberg. The day he retired, he went on Sid Rosenberg with his wife and did an interview. And he said that he went to the police commissioner and requested not to have one, that he wanted to just leave quietly, supposedly, leave quietly in the night. And he requested not to have one.
I thought it was because he had an ankle injury and he couldn't do a walkout because he had a bum ankle.
He didn't want to do a limp out?
He didn't want to do a limp out. He didn't want to go out on crutches.
Marlon from the Finest Unfiltered family. Should patrol be trained to use a ballistic shield? That's you, big guy.
Yeah, I tell you, I mean, it's not a bad idea, but when we talk about using a ballistic shield, we also talk about, shooting with a ballistic shield in your hand and using, one-handed supported for your gun, and maintaining that ballistic shield in the right area so that you're protecting yourself while you still put your gun out there. And also, you don't forget, now your gun's kind of leading you, so you have to be very careful that someone just doesn't grab that gun out of you if you make a wrong turn on a corner. I mean, there's a lot of training that needs to be done with that. But I mean, could it help? It could be used at like the front door instead of that, maybe, bring it up. But I don't know. It's a hard question. It definitely would be a beneficial tool, and it could help, those officers if you tie off a door and you put a shield up. But I don't think they should be taking over ESU's job either. So, it's a tough question. So.
And SRG, are they trained? I know that
ballistic shields. No, they're trained in heavy weapons.
Heavy weapons, but not ballistic shields.
Not ballistic shields. I think narcotics uses some shields.
When we're doing search warrants, I was in narcotics.
Right. Yeah.
Search warrants. We don't have them out on patrol
Right. No, that's what
But
I'm
we
saying.
did our own. We did our own entries with the search warrants.
Yeah.
All right, Lily wants to know what SCBA is. It's a self-contained breathing apparatus. It's like a mask that you put over that has a seal so that it's self-contained and you're breathing fresh air from the tank on your back. It's the same thing as a scuba diver has. And that scuba is self-contained underwater breathing apparatus. That's what scuba stands for. Phil says that Hardcore's wife is funny. Good thing you didn't say she's funny looking because we're politically correct here. I don't want my mom yelling at you anymore, Rob.
No, me and Hardcore X both got yelled at.
That's right. I'll go get yelled at too. And then TC set the razor down. Italian. All right, here I think Pat's fixing his questions. We answered this already, Pat. We don't know if the firearm was legal. We do know that they have an open carry, but he wasn't open carrying. It was in his hoodie pocket. Did he have any prior criminal history? None that was listed in the article that I read, and none that was stated during the chief's initial press conference. So I didn't do it. And of course, she's not going to revise her statement. RDV prefers no beards.
That's true, though. You never see baseball players wearing the beards, right? I think one or two, but most of them don't.
Yeah. Hey, Sleepy Joe, I beat you to it, big guy. Social media Viagra for Ron and Rob.
Oh, boy. We buy the generic brand, though. Save money.
Why do cops say my personal vehicle is my car too hard to pronounce?
It's true, though.
Just a cultural thing, I guess, you know?
Yeah.
Talk about your personal vehicle versus your RMP, your Radio Motor Patrol. Let's see. Michael Enriquez from LinkedIn. Appreciate you watching on LinkedIn. Jump over to YouTube next time. Anytime I had to put the bag on, I shaved. It presents a professional bearing. Agreed.
100%, brother.
100%.
100%.
Mo showing up. Mo.
Hey.
Welcome to the show, Mo. Of course, you get your shout out. We were looking for you in the early afternoon. Usually you throw a chat up there before the show even gets right after it gets posted. Welcome to the show, Mo. Make sure you watch it back on the repeat. Philly Heated guy. My first detail, Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade. His boss looked at the watch and said, according to my watch, it's 15:35. You're in the tour. Don't get involved in anything and have a happy Thanksgiving. And it was probably about 11:45 when he said that.
I would hope so. I would hope so. Made it home before your end of tour.
All right. So, Pat, I think it's more of a serious question. As an executive at the scene of a high-profile unit, how do you navigate getting info from? I think Patty is indulging, and his texts are a little off today. But if I'm going to guess what that question is, Pat, did you correct it? Is if we were at a high-profile incident, how do we navigate getting information from people? Listen, you got to know who to get the information from. It's difficult. You got to have a point. You really want to designate a point person, and have a good scribe with you. Have somebody next to you with a pen and pad that's taking down all the information so you don't miss out on something. Anything else on that one?
So I always go to the highest ranking officer there when I got there, and just ask what's going on. And then if they didn't have the answers, then you work your way down the chain, right? So where's the lieutenant? If you already also spoke to the captain, lieutenant, sergeant, and you get that information. And then I usually had, my driver was with me. I would have him go and ask, find out what's going on, information that might not have been available. But you gotta interrupt, and you gotta get those questions out. And then you gotta ask if the captain, if I was there and there was an inspector there or a captain there and they didn't have the answers, I said, well, get me the answers then. I want to know. and that's pretty much how you had to be, right on it. So.
Yeah. Phil on fire again. When did they start with the walkouts? I don't
Yeah.
know. I don't know.
I'm a big proponent against them anyway, but
I can't say anything because I had one.
yeah, I didn't want one either, truthfully. I mean, and I'll say all the time, nobody clapped when I came into the job. When I walked into, the Manhattan Community College on my first day, nobody was there clapping, so I didn't want nobody clapping on the way out. So
It's funny. I had a walkout, and it hadn't snowed in 2 years. The morning of my walkout in February of last year, 7 inches of snow. So a lot of people couldn't attend, but a lot of good people did attend. Listen, and to me, I paid for my own walkout. I paid for my own food and everything else. It was a little luncheon to say goodbye. It was nice to get one location where people come to say goodbye. You get to talk to people and everything else. It's nice. People get up and talk about you or whatever. It's not disingenuous because there's nothing for them to gain by doing it. At that point, I can't do anything for you, right? But a lot of it was my peers and people I've come up through the job with. A lot of executives were there. It was nice to see a bunch of cops that came to see me that used to work for me too. I think that touched me more than some of the executives that I'm just like still friends with. I wanted to have a little party, little luncheon, have a chance to say goodbye.
well, did you pay for your luncheon?
I did. I paid out of my own pocket.
So that's why everybody came.
Yeah, no, there was no the flyer that went around. There wasn't buying tickets and everything else. It wasn't a retirement party. My wife threw me a luncheon, but that was for family and close friends. But as far as the walkout, that I bought the lunch, I bought the food, and it was nice. Photographer came, nice pictures and everything else. Crazy 10-7. Where do executives find position postings for open spots?
I think at a certain point they were putting them on operations.
Yeah,
because I remember it was like captain or DI for certain things. But truthfully, those positions are already filled. Yeah, they're just putting that out to say
they're only putting that out for spots. They're putting it out for spots nobody wants.
We got 6 people calling, but we really want you. Yeah, okay, great. So it's already in the cards where who's getting that spot.
Right. By law, they have to post the position, right? Just like in the precinct, I'm putting up the sign every time I need somebody for conditions or anti-crime, but I know who I'm putting in, right? But it's the same thing with executives. They do put postings out in the operations orders or whatever. They do come down in operations orders, I think it is, for position vacancies. But like you said, they already know who they're taking for the most part. And if they're putting one out and don't know who they're taking, and they're actually bringing people in for actual interviews, you don't want it because nobody else wants it.
Yeah.
Simply, he says that he was afraid John and Eric would show up to his talking about shells.
I tell you,
instead of clapping. Listen, that's a ceremonious thing. The clapping.
They are lame though. But
listen, but the clapping and everything, that's for your family.
Wouldn't it be nice just to take out the guys that you work with just for dinner though? But
you do that too. But you do that too. You do that too. But the walkout is not just the walkout. It was the lunch that was really nice. With guys coming, you're seeing guys. Some guys you haven't seen for a while. So it's a reason to bring people together that you haven't seen for a while on the job. And but also, Rob, to be honest with you, your family's there, so your family gets to see the fanfare. Nobody could have been prouder than my mom. I'm the apple of her eye, and my mom came in from out of state for it, it's nice to see. I didn't get a helicopter fly over. You
should have called me.
I went into the old R&P. You go around the corner and you come right back. It's kind of silly, but it's nice. It's nice, and like a lot of other things, like the pomp and circumstance for a funeral. It's for the family.
Yeah, well, I can tell you, 4 days after I retired, my family was telling me, "Please go back to work. We don't want you home anymore."
My wife is still telling me to get a job. Phil again. Phil, we got to stop using your questions here, big guy. Does anyone remember the ballistic clipboards? They were stolen by
yeah.
Inquest in the first week.
I don't think I ever saw one. I heard about it. They were coming out, but yeah, everybody took them home. They're probably still out there.
All right. Yes, Pat, I have heard about them. And like I just said, I did not have aviation. And it wasn't because of the weather, because by time my walkout happened, the sun was out, the snow had melted. It was one of those crazy days. Aviation could have went up. I didn't have aviation scheduled for a flyover, and I didn't have a final EOT transmission.
Now, the final EOT transmission really never took off. I remember that the other agencies, you would see it all the time, and I heard a few here. I think Joe Resnick did one on citywide. I don't know. It was on a special operations division radio, but yeah.
And provide SOD insight on the request for aviation flyovers at walkouts. Is there a rank threshold? I don't know.
Well, there isn't really. But when I was there, it depended on the weather and who asked for it. And we kind of didn't say, "Oh, because you're a police officer doing a walkout, we're not giving it to you." No, it depended on obviously the needs of the department, how many helicopters we had up, how many hours we had on the helicopter, whether or not we needed to go in for service. Because there were times when we had 2 or 3 helicopters down because they were required service. And to put more airtime on one of the helicopters would put them closer to that maintenance schedule. So you had to do it appropriately so that everything was done so that helicopters for patrol and air sea rescue. So I remember when we were allowed to at certain times, you could give a helicopter for anybody walk out. So it was not unheard of. Depending on who called. If a police officer called up and says, "I want a helicopter, for my walkout," we'd be like, "Yeah, no, you got to get somebody, somebody from your commander, CO, or somebody to call and ask." So
yeah, I knew the XO at CO at aviation at the time, and one of my lieutenants was doing a walkout, Stephen McDonald, and he got actually. Quick aside story. So my lieutenant, my midnight platoon commander is retiring. Really nice guy. Stephen McDonald's old partner from Central Park. Stephen McDonald was at the walkout. And I called up and I got him to fly over, right? And basically it's just, they're out on patrol, right? Because you weren't allowed to have it, especially for a lieutenant. So they do the flyover. It's nice. The family's there, blah, blah, blah. He goes off into the sunset. Steve McDonald goes down to an event at 1PP with Ray Kelly, tells him how nice the walkout was for his old partner. They had an aviation flyover and everything else. What? Aviation flyover? Yeah. The lieutenant got a rip at aviation for doing it. So
yeah. Well, we used to. I'm not giving away special secrets here, but aviation did do directed patrol on certain crime areas. So if they flew over something, they flew over it.
And hardcore mine was small. It was at PSA 9 in Queens, at the Pominock, PSA 9. So it was small. And no, we didn't order people from all the PSAs to attend to have it. It wasn't like that. Let's see. Jack wants to know, always, right on top of important questions. What was the menu at Ron's luncheon? I had the hero and I had the hot buffet.
Well, so you're saying you were the hero?
No, not at all. Not at all. My mom was the hero because you want to laugh.
Whoa! I'm not going against your mom, no matter what you say. All right.
My mom came in from out of state, and the day after my walkout, we all had COVID except my mom. Somehow my mom
see?
didn't catch it. Everybody else in my car caught COVID. So you got to laugh. So mom was the hero.
I went to Whedon's walkout. I went to Whedon's walkout and caught COVID. So obviously walkouts lead to COVID.
And Jackson, nothing like free work. Free. Nah, listen, I left the food for the 4 to 12s. Nobody took it. I left the food there for the 4 to 12 guys when the 4 to 12 guys came in. And yeah, I paid for it myself out of my pocket. Pat's 25 years sober. God bless you, my brother. I suffer from big thumbitis. I know it. Every time I text somebody, of comes over as if. Because it's right next to it. And for some reason, I always do if. And people sometimes are like, you're questioning that? No, it meant to be oh. The Jaffe. Yeah, she provided plenty of entertainment in my career, but she wasn't there. She was retired. Let's see. Again, Pat, no force for mine. We got to wrap this up, people. We are 2 hours and 51 minutes. We swore we weren't going to do a 3-hour show tonight. See any more questions?
No.
No, there's no booze.
Not till later.
No, I'm not really a drinker.
No, I mean, I think he means talking about at a walkout.
I had plenty of bottles from gifts. Let's leave it at that. Right? I became a hoops referee now. I'll leave that for you, my friend. I'll leave that for you. All right. Simply E, you're the one that wanted it. You called for it on the day show today that we were going to have a 3-hour show tonight, and you're saying we're 7 minutes away. We're going to make it because we got a couple other things to just quickly go over. So that's it. No more Ask the Executive.
Look, Harneck's core is tired. He goes, I'm tired, boss.
You love
he's
it.
hungry. He's hungry and he's tired.
He's hungry, he's tired, and he's going to run out and get his kid.
Yeah, I know. I'm with him, man. I'm tired. I'm hungry too.
And Sleepy Joe wants to know if we're getting dismissed from the detail. No, you can tend to the THV, and we're going to give you your final instructions. How's that?
We got to call operations. We got to call John McCarry. We got to call John McCarry, see if we can dismiss.
That's it. Just real quick, want to make an important point. Tomorrow, for those of you still here in New York with me, we have the mayoral general election debate is live at 7 o'clock on NBC4 New York. You can watch it on Telemundo 47. I believe you can also watch it on the News 4 New York app. If you're out of state, you can watch it on YouTube. So make sure you watch that. I think it's going to be very interesting. I'm hoping that Curtis Sliwa really steps up and that word salad Zohan Mandami is seen for who he is, where he can't answer the questions, or his questions and his policies are not what New York City needs right now. And Andrew Cuomo, let's see what his questions and answers are, because the platform that I see is that he runs an anti-Zohan Mandami platform and not a real platform of his own, where Curtis Sliwa, he has a platform. He is pro-public safety. He's been out doing public safety for over 40 years with the Guardian Angels. He will not have his beret on tomorrow because he gets a lot of flack and pushback for that. So he said on Sal Greco's show the other day that he will not have his beret on to appease those who think he needs to have a more professional look. He does describe why he has the beret. The beret is in memory of those Guardian Angels that have been seriously injured and or killed over all the years. And it's a reminder and a reflection for them.
I think if you saw him, he was at a business meeting just recently with the other candidates, and Curtis did a phenomenal job, speaking about what he knows about the city, about what he's done for the city, He's done a hell of a lot, and he knows every aspect of the city. So please, if you can tune in, whether YouTube or wherever, listen to the man and get the word out to everybody else. I mean, he's your confident choice for mayor. He's going to be the one that takes the city to the next level.
And if you're following our social media, at Exec Perspective on X, you'll see that we retweet and comment on a lot of the posts that hashtag every vote counts. Because if everybody that says they want to vote for Curtis Sliwa but don't think he can win goes out and votes, we have a hell of a chance. Saying that he's the spoiler, he is the Republican nominee. The spoiler is Andrew Cuomo, who lost handedly to Zohan Mondami, no matter what the polls said, right? The polls said he was up 30 points. Don't listen to the polls, people. The polls say that Cuomo was going to win the Democratic primary, and he lost to Zohan Mondami, and it wasn't close.
No.
So don't look at the polls.
Where
Where are the polls?
Hillary Clinton was going to be the next president in 2016.
Hillary Clinton was going to be president. There was no way that Donald Trump was ever going to win. So we at the Executive Perspective, we proudly endorse Curtis Sliwa for New York City mayor. We are working with his people before they start asking. We are working with his team to try and get him on. He's very busy. He campaigns for 18 to 20 hours a day. He's out there pounding the pavement in every single neighborhood. You see on his social media, 1 minute he's in Staten Island, the next minute he's up in Harlem, then he's over in Queens somewhere, and then an event in the Bronx. He's everywhere. Pound the pavement, talk to the people on the street. They're supporting Curtis Sliwa, but we need those people that support him to get out and actually vote for Curtis Sliwa. We need somebody with common sense. Yes, he's not a politician. You got a lifelong politician in Cuomo. Look at him. Is he going to run on his reputation? That's not going to win him the election. And then you have Zohan Mondami, who doesn't have much. He's been in the assembly. Hasn't done much in the assembly and doesn't have much life experience prior to that, other than being a social. I don't even want to say it, but he's out there. So please watch the debate tomorrow. The more you hear Curtis Sliwa talk, he's not. People didn't take him serious. I don't think they took him as serious the last mayoral election. I don't think that. Some people that don't know and don't follow him don't think that he's articulate. He can talk off the cuff about any topic. I've seen him at interviews. We have spoken to him personally. He's been on the Finest Unfiltered Day Show with John and Eric. He was on with Sal Greco yesterday. And the man can talk clearly and in depth about all of these policies and issues that are going on. He's very well versed. He knows what his position is, and he knows what his opponent's positions are. And he's able to counter their points and their positions. So please watch that and then get out and vote and get out and do the early voting. So with that, any final words?
Yeah, I remember I forgot about it, but Arbad asked in the beginning of the chat, he asked, whose roster would you rather be on? Would you rather be on John's or Eric's? And I told him we would answer that. And I'm going to answer it with, I don't want to answer that live on a podcast. So Arbad, if you want to send us an email, I'll answer that, but I'm not going to answer it live on the current podcast. So
I'll answer it. I want to be on Eric's roster because I know Eric for years.
All right.
I know
Eric.
I know John. I know John very well now through the podcast, and I worked with him one New Year's Eve detail. But I know Eric. I've known Eric for years and got to know him pretty well when I was his borough commander. So that's my reasoning for being on Eric's roster.
I would say John and Eric are both our bosses. So I'm not going to pick either one.
They're not all bosses. Come on. This is the Executive Perspective on the Finest Unfiltered Network.
I'm the Finest Unfiltered founder.
It's a family. Eric,
all right.
John is the founder of the Finest Unfiltered Network. All right. All right. So tomorrow, anything else? That's it.
No, just be, as we've seen in the videos, be
Yeah.
careful out there. Watch your six, watch your backs. Take care of each other. If your partner's not acting right next to you, snap him or her up and say, hey, listen, take him to the side. This is what you got to do. You gotta be spot on, as Eric would say. The life that you save may be your own or your partner's. So, just be careful and be safe out there.
Thank you, Chronicle. Thank you, Phil. We appreciate it. RDV, everybody else in the chat, we appreciate it. So tomorrow, 1:05 p.m., the Sal Greco show. Like I said, go back and watch yesterday's show on the recorded episode on the Finest Unfiltered Network. He had Curtis Sliwa on for an hour yesterday. It's tough to get him. He's campaigning so hard. Then he had to go open up his new office in Queens, his new campaign office in Queens. So go back and watch that show tomorrow. They're going to be previewing the mayoral debate and discussing Mondami's public apology to the NYPD today on Fox News. Now, I did not see that. I was prepping for the show. My wife was watching and was astounded by certain things in his policy that he was talking about. I did not hear about this alleged NYPD apology, if he finally gave one, because he's a word salad every time it's been brought up, but maybe because it's been such a contentious thing that he finally decided to give a real apology. I'll have to go back and I'll have to see that clip. Jack, if you have that, send it over to me just so I can watch it for my personal view. But watch his show tomorrow, the Sal Greco show, 1:05 p.m. Jack Stern, the producer, has the producer's take at the end, so you can hear from Jack and get his civilian take on things at the end. And then on Friday, you'll have John, Eric, and Marlon on the Friday Roundtable. They'll be recapping the week's events and going over everything NYPD. I'm sure that they'll absolutely be discussing the debate, and that'll be probably the main topic of their debate. And then they'll be back on Monday, John, Eric, and Marlon for the usual show. And on Tuesday, again, Sal at 1:05, followed by the 10-4 Tavern at 7:05 p.m. A great show this week, like we talked about when Pete Faselli was in the chat earlier, with Pete Faselli and Tommy Joyce. This coming week, Chief of Detectives Bobby Boyce is their special guest. I know Chief Boyce for many years through the job. I think he's a gentleman. I think he is an articulate person. I think he was a great chief of detectives. I look forward to seeing this interview. He's got so many stories to tell. He's the host of New York Homicide on the Oxygen Network. I actually saw him at a funeral last week, they were talking about possibly going into season 4. So, but I'm just curious as to which stories he's going to tell, because he's got so many to tell. So watch the 10-4 Tavern. It's great. It's a different type of lineup than the rest of the shows. That's the great thing about this network. We have different formats for each show. Pete and Tom interview high-profile cases, people that had high-profile cases, from detectives to chiefs of police to federal law enforcement leaders. Great show. Check them out. Go check them out on the repeat. And then we'll be back next Wednesday at 5:05 p.m. for the next Executive Perspective. So until then, we thank you. We thank you for the engagement, and be safe, everybody.